On March 1st, 2001, in the small town of East Point, Georgia, Trent Floyd and his young daughter stopped by the home of Trent's 51-year-old mother, Cynthia Roll, for a visit.
His daughter did what any granddaughter would do. She ran up to the front door and started knocking, waiting for her grandma to answer.
Grandma! She's not answering the door.
Well, the car said maybe she went out with some friends.
Something catches his eye inside the carport. He sees broken glass all over the carport floor. As he gets closer, he can see his mom. Cynthia's in the car.
It was then that he noticed his mother slumped over the passenger seat, covered in blood.
He became hysterical. The neighbors could hear him screaming.
Help, she's in the...
Neighbors come over and they try to do CPR on her, but she is deceased.
But what terrible events had brought Cynthia into the crosshairs of a killer? As night falls on East Point, Georgia, it brings all the terrors that come with it.
The people are afraid. The city's afraid.
They don't want to leave their house. They're afraid to stop at stoplights. It was insane.
Born and raised in South Florida, Cynthia Floyd was known for her friendly demeanor.
Cynthia had a good spirit, a good person to be around.
Following her high school graduation, she moved to Atlanta, Georgia to pursue a higher education.
She came to Atlanta initially to go to Clark Atlanta University, and she graduated from there and decided to stay here.
After graduating college, Cynthia went to work for the Georgia Department of Corrections as a probation officer, where her vibrant personality quickly garnered the attention of coworkers.
I remember Miss Floyd coming to us because she was such a pleasant person, and I thought to myself, things are looking up around the probation office.
She was like sunshine. She lit up a room when she came in. Cynthia and I were both probation officers, and we supervised caseloads of convicted felons. When you're in law enforcement, you have to be in it because you love it.
But Cynthia wasn't just dedicated to her job. She was also a doting mother to her son, Trent.
Cynthia had a son from a previous marriage. She had married a man out of college, and although the marriage didn't work out, Cynthia loved being a mother.
That boy loved his mother, and she loved her son.
We both raised our children as single mothers. We experienced the same trials and tribulations.
During those difficult times, Cynthia relied on her Christian faith to persevere.
I have the paperwork you asked for. Thank you. She was a church-going woman, and she showed how dedicated she was in her faith in everything that she did.
It was Cynthia's devout faith in God that caught the eye of her coworker, Rosa Lewis.
Rosa started out as our secretary, and because we were a very small office, everybody gets close to everybody.
Miss Lewis is a Seventh-day Adventist. She had a husband, she had 2 children, and very spiritual, very big in her church. It's easy to see how they would become very good friends.
Hey, baby.
Hi.
Cynthia spent years without any romance. Then in 1995, she met a man who came in and swept her off her feet.
Cynthia went back home to West Palm, Florida for a high school reunion and reunited with a man that she knew from school.
His name was Earl Roll. He was a 53-year-old postal worker, and the two quickly grew close.
He was a quiet man, very nice, very respectful of her. He would come up and stay, and she would go down and stay when they had time.
The two were married in the fall of 1999, and they were committed to each other despite the distance.
She still had years to work on her job, and he still had years to work on his job, so it wasn't practical for either one of them to quit their jobs and move to a common place.
Despite the obstacles, the newlyweds were dedicated to making their marriage work. Inspired by her friend's newfound joy, Rosa began to open up to Cynthia about the shortcomings in her own marriage to her husband of 23 years, William Charles Lewis.
Life with her husband was chaotic. It was stressful.
Rosa Lewis had actually confided in Cynthia Roll about the difficulties within her marriage.
Everything that you have belongs to me.
She felt very conflicted about a divorce versus her spiritual beliefs. And that's a bad spot to be in.
Cynthia had found love again in her 40s. She wanted that for her friend Rosa. And so she advised her from that perspective. And Rosa finally did it. Rosa finally left.
With Cynthia's support and guidance, Rosa found renewed hope in life.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
She decided to go back to school and get her bachelor's degree.
With all the hard work you've been putting in school, I got you a little something.
And she got a position as a probation officer.
Rosa was inspired by her friend to make positive changes in her life and leave the past behind.
You're so
You're welcome.
But just as both women had begun to live the lives they had always wanted, by a cruel twist of fate, on March 1st, 2001, Cynthia's had been cut short.
Everybody's talking about Cynthia's death, and everybody's giving their theory.
It was just a shock in the minds of everybody that knew her. Who would have done such a thing?
After years of memories and sharing secrets, best friends Rosa Lewis and Cynthia Roll were both living the lives they had always envisioned for themselves.
They were both co-workers, colleagues, as well as friends.
But now, on March 1st, 2001, Cynthia Roll has been found murdered in her own driveway.
What we got, officer?
We've got a deceased female sitting in the vehicle. The house is still locked. None of her personal effects have been taken.
The driver's side window has been shattered. She's been shot multiple times.
She was slumped over the passenger side of the vehicle, and there was a pile of papers on the floorboard.
It looked like she was ambushed as she pulled into her driveway. Someone had waited for her to get there, and when she pulled in, took that opportunity to walk up to the driver's side window and shoot her.
Given the condition of the body, investigators suspect Cynthia had been dead for some time before Trent found her.
By that time, Cynthia had been dead for almost 24 hours.
Next, investigators turned to a motive.
We noticed that her purse was still in her car, her jewelry was still on. There was no forcible entry to any of the doors or any of the windows.
So there's no reason to believe that robbery would have been a motive. Then you start getting to think, is it vendetta? Is it random? What makes sense?
Unfortunately, the lack of evidence isn't helping matters.
Even though Mrs. Roll had sustained multiple gunshots, there were no shell casings in the carport, around the carport, or inside the vehicle.
Meanwhile, word of Cynthia's murder reaches her beloved friends and co-workers.
A friend called me and she said, "We've lost her." I said, "Lost her? What do you mean you lost her?" I immediately got the sense that this was no joke.
The entire Atlanta office was just devastated.
No one more so than Cynthia's friend, Rosa Lewis.
Rosa was absolutely devastated by the loss of her good friend. She couldn't even begin to process the tragedy.
Police begin speaking with neighbors in search of possible witnesses.
The night before, about 6:15 or 6:30 in the evening, a neighbor reported several gunshots. Police department responded, didn't see anyone.
Although it would seem the shooter had managed to evade officers' attention the night before, one neighbor did notice a suspicious individual running shortly after the shots were fired.
I was driving home the other night and all I saw was a heavy-set black man running that way.
Of course, law enforcement thought perhaps this was the perpetrator. Maybe this person was a suspect, or at least a person of interest who could have been involved.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
While the neighbor can't provide much more of a description, once detectives are finally able to speak to Cynthia's son, Trent, he provides a few clues that could change everything.
Trent was very close to his mother, had a great relationship with her.
They start asking Trent, who would do this to her? Does your mom have any enemies?
Everyone loved my mom. I can't think of a single person that would want to hurt her.
I know you talk on a daily basis. Is there anyone else close to her?
But there's her husband, Earl, but Earl is in Florida, though.
These veteran detectives know that when a crime looks personal, it's best to look at the person closest to the victim. For Cynthia, that would be her husband, Earl.
Although Cynthia and Earl's long-distance marriage seemed perfect to those around them, could problems have been lurking beneath the surface? Detectives make a note to meet with Earl once he arrives in town, and while they keep him on their radar, investigators continue to ask Trent questions about his mother's life.
Look, my mom is a probation officer, so I don't know if there can be some type of connection there.
Okay, we'll definitely look into that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
After speaking with Trent, detectives wonder, could Cynthia's profession have gotten her killed?
Immediately, police believe this has to be connected to the probation office. And so they start kind of combing through her records to see who stands out as a suspect.
The next morning, detectives hit pay dirt.
We found one person, Brinson Ballard. He lived within a half a block from her home.
He had failed a mandatory drug test weeks earlier, and he was upset about it because he didn't want to go back to prison.
Had Brinson blamed Cynthia for his probation violation and retaliated with violence. Although friends say Cynthia had a heart of gold, they acknowledge she could be a stickler for the rules.
She was very adamant about what your responsibility as a probationer is.
Brinson was on probation, and it was a gun-related charge. So now we have somebody who's on probation by the victim, and that his probation may be revoked. A lot of motive there.
Detectives bring in the neighbor who reported seeing a suspicious individual the night Cynthia was killed.
We do a photo lineup.
Do you mind taking a look at these photos here, see if any of these individuals resemble the fellow that you saw?
This one.
Although detectives believe they are on the right path, nothing can prepare them for what this cold-blooded killer has planned next.
At that point, we obviously knew that we had a problem in the city of East Point.
When 51-year-old Cynthia Roll was shot to death outside her home, everyone close to her was devastated, including her dear friend and co-worker, Rosa Lewis.
They were good buddies. They relied on each other.
After divorcing her husband, William Charles Lewis, she had to rely heavily on her friend Cynthia to get through the process of starting over.
As homicide detectives continue their investigation, they suspect Cynthia's killer was no stranger.
Crimes against persons sort of start in a circle, and you look at the people that are closest to the victim.
One growing possibility is that the shooting was the work of a former inmate named Brinson Ballard.
Cynthia was Brinson's probation officer, and he lived one block over. A neighbor said she saw a man fitting his description running away from the direction of Cynthia's home on the night of February 28th.
He has means, he has opportunity, and he has possibly a motive, which means he's their number one suspect.
Okay, thank you.
Brinson Ballard did have an outstanding warrant, and we did arrest him based on that warrant, brought him back to the police station to interview him, and asked him specifically about that day, that night, where was he, what he had done.
All right, Brinson, I'm gonna be real upfront with you. You're going back to prison for that probation violation.
Man, you don't even have to remind me. Why am I even here? Your probation got revoked, and all of a sudden your probation officer turns up dead a block from your house. You think that's a coincidence?
Wait, Miss Roll is dead?
He was very surprised to find out that someone shot Miss Roll and had killed her. Even though he was on probation with her, even though she may revoke his probation, he didn't have anything but nice things to say about her. He was genuinely upset.
He said that she always tried to help him, so there was no way that he would try to hurt her.
We asked him his alibi for the time of the shooting. He told us that he was on the telephone talking with his girlfriend, and he was on there for a pretty long time.
You know we're gonna verify one way or the other if you're telling the truth. Man, I'm telling the truth, I swear.
While police work to secure Brinson's phone records, detectives know they still have another man to talk to, Cynthia's long-distance husband, Earl Roll.
Immediately upon learning about Cynthia's death, Earl rushes to drive the 8 hours from West Palm Beach, Florida to East Point, Georgia, and voluntarily comes to the police station to answer detectives' questions.
On March 5th, just 4 days into the investigation, detectives sit down with Earl. According to Earl, he had last seen Cynthia the week before.
They spent the weekend together, and he went back home on Monday.
He tells detectives the last time he saw Cynthia was 2 days prior to her death, and she was in good spirits and nothing seemed to be wrong.
Sir, we have to ask you, where were you the night of Cynthia's incident, around 9 in the evening?
I work at the post office down in West Palm, and I don't get off till 5 o'clock. Now, how could I have driven an 8-hour distance in only 3 hours? Besides, what reason would I have to kill the woman I love?
After speaking with Earl, it's apparent that he is heartbroken by her death, and his alibi checks out.
After clearing Earl as a suspect, detectives turn their attention back to Brinson Ballard, Cynthia's probationer.
They pull phone records, and they're able to substantiate that what Ballard said was true.
Guys, Brinson wasn't home. Phone records confirm it.
He was home before, during, and after the murder, on the phone talking to his girlfriend.
Once we put everything together, we believe that he was not involved in Cynthia's death.
With both Earl Roll and Brinson Ballard ruled out, detectives are back to the drawing board.
Detective Popham.
But not before receiving word that the autopsy results are in.
Autopsy's in, guys. 40 caliber round was recovered from the body.
While the information is a starting point, in the hours and days that follow, leads are few and far between.
No one could understand why she got killed because we couldn't find any enemies. She wasn't in any kind of bad relationship with anyone.
So police are still actively investigating that case when several weeks later there is another shooting.
On the evening of April the 8th, we heard a shooting call come out.
We arrived at the residence of Roger Orr.
How you doing, sir?
Roger Orr was suffering from a couple of gunshot wounds to his arm.
Well, until some crazy guy shot me, I guess I was doing all right.
As paramedics tend to his injuries, Roger is able to recount to detectives what happened.
Roger Orr is a former construction worker, an older man, enjoying the day.
The weather was very nice that particular evening, so he had his front door open.
A shadowy figure comes to his front door. He heard the noise and he went to go investigate it.
And at that time, the shooting started. He put up his arm in a defensive gesture.
He's able to make it to his own gun. He heads back to the door to confront the shooter, but the person has disappeared.
After taking Roger's statement, investigators search the scene.
They find his .40 caliber bullet.
But that's not their only discovery.
Sir, officer, found this near the stairs.
It was a note, and one side of the note it said, "I've been locked up for 6 weeks. Someone has to pay." And on the reverse side of the note, it had the letters J-A-C-K, the name Jack.
Police wondered, did somebody have a vendetta against Roger, or was he responsible for somebody getting arrested?
Before detectives can speculate further, a call comes in reporting another shooting just a few miles away.
Detective Popham.
They get a 911 call from a woman who says a man has collapsed in my front yard.
The victim is identified as Antonio Stefani, an employee of a nearby hospital.
Unfortunately, his injuries were fatal, and he did not survive.
I see a car riddled with bullet holes, and there's .40 caliber shell casings all in the street.
They start asking around to see if anybody saw anything.
A neighbor saw a black man loitering outside her yard. He was pacing back and forth. He looked so suspicious that she called the police to report it.
The next thing she knows, she hears gunshots. And this same man is taking off, speeding away in a gold Malibu.
After hearing the neighbor's eyewitness account, detectives begin formulating theories about the crime.
Whoever did this to him intentionally either targeted him as an individual or was just going to shoot the next person that pulled up to the stop sign.
Processing the scene, police officers stumble upon a vital piece of evidence that hints at a disturbing connection.
One of the uniform officers saw a piece of paper sort of blowing away, and he went and picked up the piece of paper.
Hey, detective. Yeah. Found this.
It simply said, in all caps and highlight marker, Jack.
You just don't have things like that dropped at one scene and then 3 miles away at another scene.
Police struggle with the motives for the messages. Was it somebody trying to play a sick joke? Or was it a psychotic killer who was trying to have a conversation with the police?
As the investigation progressed, when we looked at Cynthia's case and the fact that she was a probation officer, we got to thinking about what the note said at Roger's residence, talking about, "I just spent 6 weeks in jail and someone's going to pay."
Working on a hunch, detectives review photos taken from Cynthia Roll's crime scene, only to make an earth-shattering discovery.
There's a Jack note on the floorboard of her car.
It was a big, oh wow moment. My arm hair stood up. We couldn't believe what we were dealing with.
As police realize they may have a serial killer on their hands, a new question arises. When will he strike again?
This became very personal for the investigators. If they didn't stop this crazed gunman, he was going to kill somebody else.
On April 8, 2001, homicide detectives in East Point, Georgia, fear that Cynthia Roll's murder was only the beginning. A serial killer may be running loose on the streets.
Police are working extended shifts and overtime with beefed up patrols. The police don't know when this person will strike next or who the next victim will be.
Each of these incidents has occurred in what is otherwise known as a quiet residential area. Cynthia Roll is murdered in the carport of her home. Roger Orr is shot while he's inside his home. Antonio Stephanie is shot in his car as he comes to the stop sign.
The people are afraid. The city's afraid.
However, after nearly 2 months of terror, the nightmare is far from over for the residents of this quiet southern town.
We're continuing to investigate leads, and on the night of Thursday, April the 12th, we get a call on Linwood Avenue.
Police arrive at the residence and meet Barbara Northern, who explains that she and her daughter had been enjoying an evening together watching their favorite TV show.
The only thing they heard was a gunshot and the TV went blank.
Ma'am, you're very lucky to be alive.
The police had to tell her, somebody shot through your window, and the bullet was trapped inside of the TV.
It could very well have struck either the mother or the daughter of those two women as they sat there in the privacy of their home.
Suspecting this may have been another Jack shooting, detectives canvassed the yard, looking for evidence of the serial killer's involvement.
We're looking around, we noticed that under the windshield wiper of Miss Northern's car, there was a note.
We first looked and saw that it said Jack on one side, and flipped it over and saw, "You better count your body bags." It literally gave me goosebumps. It made my hair stand up. That message says, I'm not stopping, I'm not done, I'm gonna continue, and it's gonna be a lot.
You can imagine how alarming that was.
We start looking at each victim and trying to find some type of commonality between them. Do they go to the same service station? Do they go to the same church? Do they have a group that they all attend? And we couldn't find anything.
But before police can make any progress, another 911 call comes in.
2 weeks later, a woman calls 911. Her roommate was gunned down outside of their home.
This time, the victim is none other than Cynthia Roll's dear friend, Rosa Lewis.
We responded to the scene. Rosa was in critical condition. She could not talk. She could not tell us anything. She had been shot that many times, and even though there were some vital signs, but we felt like she wasn't going to make it.
Rosa is rushed to the hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, detectives try to piece together what happened.
She had pulled into the apartment complex. As she was getting out of her vehicle, there was a person one car over.
The individual shot her multiple times.
She had crawled 25 yards from her car to the door where she was living with her friend. It was just horrific. It was horrible.
The details of Rosa's shooting strike a chord with detectives.
The ambush-style shooting feels eerily similar to the other Jack shootings.
We had a person shot multiple times. That's consistent. We have the same caliber weapon being shot. That's consistent. But unlike the other ones, there was no note.
Although the shooting feels like the work of Jack, detectives are no closer to uncovering the serial killer's identity than they were before.
They find one neighbor who lived on one of the upper floors who told police that she didn't see the shooter, but she did see a blue Dodge Intrepid speeding away from the scene.
At one shooting, we have a blue Dodge Intrepid. At another one, we have a gold Malibu. At another one, we don't have a vehicle at all. So it's creates even more questions and takes us even in more directions on what the possibilities are.
So detectives speak to Rosa's roommate, Nichelle Thompson.
We asked the roommate a little bit about Rosa.
We found out that Miss Lewis recently separated from her husband.
Are there any details that you can share with us about Rosa and William's recent divorce? Like anyone in particular that we need to worry about?
No, not I can think of.
She told me that her divorce was on good terms, so he even helped Rosa move in here.
We're talking to Miss Lewis's roommate, and while we're talking to her, trying to find out more history on her, I look over and I see credentials of her being a Georgia State probation officer. Detective Barge and I looked at each other, and that was an aha moment. We knew that there's a connection. We have two people now with the same profession.
This investigation now has come full circle because their first theory was this was connected to the probation office. Now they know that it is, but who is the person doing it?
Armed with a promising new lead, detectives press forward in their investigation. But will the path to discovering Jack's true identity steer them somewhere they never expected?
The thought did come to mind that whoever shot Miss Rose may have had something to do with Miss Lewis's shooting. But it did not dawn on me at the time who that person might be.
The East Point community has endured 2 months of terror as a serial shooter only known as Jack rampages through the streets.
East Point residents are frightened. They don't want to leave their house. They're afraid to stop at stoplights.
While police initially believed that Jack was choosing his victims randomly, the latest shooting of probation officer Rosa Lewis has left detectives wondering if there's not something more to Jack's patterns.
We don't know if this is somebody who has a vendetta against law enforcement, specifically maybe probation officers.
And an even scarier thought was, who in the probation office would be next?
On April 25th, while Rosa Lewis fights for her life at the hospital, detectives travel to the home of her ex-husband, William Charles Lewis.
We decided to go ahead and notify them that she had been shot and she was in critical condition.
As police are knocking on the door, a blue Dodge Intrepid pulls up to the house.
The night Rose was shot, one of the witnesses that saw the car speed away described it as a dark blue Dodge.
And who gets out of the vehicle? William Charles Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, we hate to break it to you, but we're here because we have some bad news.
Police informed him that his ex-wife had been seriously wounded and had been shot the night before. Police were very surprised by William Charles Lewis's reaction.
How can something like this happen?
I beg your pardon, sir?
It's just not like Rosa.
He never asked police her condition or who they thought did this.
Police were just very surprised by his demeanor. He did not appear panicked or upset.
Sir, do you mind if we go inside and ask you a few questions?
Oh, yeah, sure.
You wouldn't think that this man was married to this woman for more than 20 years and had 2 children with her based on the way he was acting.
As we were talking with him, one of his sons came home, and we decided that maybe this would be better to talk to them back at the police station.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me just grab a few things out of the bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna come with you if you don't mind.
Okay.
As William gathers his things, detectives make a chilling discovery.
I was scanning the bedroom, and I saw highlight markers on the dresser.
The yellow highlighters and the paper was consistent with the notes where 𝐄𝐏𝐒𝐋 had been written that were left at each of the other 4 crime scenes.
It's almost like in a movie when you zoom in and it gets closer and you focus on that. That was just a huge aha, eureka moment of we're on the right track. There's much more here than we know.
With William Charles Lewis now firmly on their radar, police escort him and his 21-year-old son, Alex, to the station for further questioning.
I tried to figure out strategically who was the better person to talk to first. And since right now, Mr. Lewis is looking like a very good suspect, let's talk to his son first, find out a little family history.
Tell us why you think you're here. Describe your parents' relationship to me, and be honest.
We found that the amicable split wasn't that at all. There was 23 years of mental and physical abuse. Mr. Lewis was very controlling, and this happened over a 23-year period.
2 weeks ago, your dad rented a car April the 6th through April the 9th. I think it's what it's on the rental agreement. You describe that car to me.
It was gold Chevy Malibu.
This was precisely the car the neighbors saw leaving the scene of the Stephanie shooting.
They asked where his father was on the night of Rosa's shooting. And he says, I came back home around 11 p.m. and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I knocked on the door to talk to my father, and my father wasn't in his bedroom. So where was William Charles Lewis?
Detectives are beginning to suspect they know the answer.
Do you think he would lie to us? I don't know what my dad's going to be. My dad is unpredictable. An interesting one. It's the best way to describe it.
A person who is unpredictable is a person who can be this upstanding pillar of the community, and the very next minute, they're this diabolical killer.
But could this unpredictable divorcee not only be capable of shooting the mother of his children, but also be the serial shooter that has been terrorizing East Point for months?
He thought that he had all the answers, that he could actually fool everyone.
As 41-year-old Rosa Lewis fights for her life inside an Atlanta area hospital, detectives in East Point, Georgia prepare to question her ex-husband, William, about her shooting and the terrible string of crimes that has terrorized the community and claimed the life of Rosa's friend and co-worker, Cynthia Roll.
The fear was palpable in the air. People were afraid and confused that they could be the next victim.
Although William denies any wrongdoing, his behavior, along with circumstantial evidence, has police wondering if he knows more than he's letting on.
When we began to interview Mr. Lewis, he made a lot of odd statements.
Do you know why you're here? Why do you think you're here?
Well, I don't know. I guess obviously I'm going to be the first suspect in this shooting.
Every time we try to get him back to what's going on with his wife, he would talk more about himself, and that was his focus. I need you to believe that I'm a good guy.
Why would Rosa be scared of you?
I can only tell you all what she told me. She says you can get anybody to do anything at any time. And I get people to see things the way it needs to be. I like to set a goal and then try to get there at all costs, no matter what it is.
They start questioning him as to where he was on the night of the incident. And during the conversation, he's very inconsistent as to where he was, what he was doing.
Yeah, you said some different things, yeah.
I have no explanation for it.
Neither do we.
I don't know what to tell you.
The truth?
I told you the truth as it is. What happened? I told you the truth about it.
You didn't tell us the truth about what happened last night. We'll start there.
He told police that he came home from a job site about 11 p.m. and never left the house again. He stated his son came into his room about 4 a.m., which was contradictory to what his son stated in his interview.
He came down 4, maybe 5. I don't know. I was reading. I was doing different little stuff. I wasn't even paying attention to the time. I just heard him. He came down to see me.
You're lying or he's lying? I think you're lying.
You can think all you want.
Now police have lots of information. They have William Charles Lewis being in possession of a gold-colored Malibu. They have William Charles Lewis driving a dark-colored Intrepid. And they have a demeanor and a reaction that's very suspicious when you have informed him that his ex-wife has been seriously injured.
While detectives continue to hammer William Charles Lewis with questions, Rosa's work supervisor, Doug Cloud, arrives at the station with pertinent information and a damning piece of evidence.
A month prior to Miss Lewis's shooting, Miss Lewis had given me a letter.
I need you to hold on to this letter for me. If anything ever happens to me, I need you to open this up and read what's on the inside.
I went back and opened the letter, and in that letter, it implied not only to look at her husband if anything happened to her, but look at her husband with reference to Miss Rhodes' shooting, too.
The fact that there was a note naming him as the person that would want to harm her, we made the determination that afternoon to charge William Charles Lewis with the shooting of Rosa Lewis.
There was no doubt in our minds that he was the one that shot Miss Lewis. He was the one that killed Cynthia Roll. He was the one that shot and killed Antonio Stephanie, that he shot into Mr. Northman's home, that he shot Mr. Orr.
In order to prove their theory, detectives turned to the physical evidence, .40 caliber shell casings, and Jack's own notes.
We were able to get those shell casings from the crime scene of Rosa Lewis, delivered to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and they matched the shell casings from Roger Orr's residence on April the 8th, the murder of Antonio Stepney, as well as the northern crime scene that occurred on April the 12th.
Once they had William Charles Lewis in custody, they compared his handwriting sample to the handwriting in the Jack notes. They were a perfect match.
Armed with an overwhelming amount of evidence, police move forward with additional charges.
The defendant is arrested and charged with not only the shooting of Rosa Lewis, he is charged with the shooting death of Antonio Stepney, the shooting of Roger Orr, and he is charged with the shooting death of Cynthia Roll.
But just what had incited William Charles Lewis to commit such acts of violence?
They found out that William constantly threatened her, mentally torture her, try to control her, to manipulate her.
This was an individual that we learned would stand over his wife and threaten to throw scalding water on her. This was a man who was able to exert for 23 years that type of control.
Rosa had confided in Cynthia with some of the intimate details of her and Charles's marriage, which to include infidelity on Charles's part.
Miss Roll was very good friends with his wife, and she was the catalyst for her to finally leave him after 23 years of abuse and pain.
When Rosa decided that she wanted to leave, he set out on this course to really hurt her. And so he killed her best friend.
This was a calculated, intentional, malicious effort on his part to get back at Rosa Lewis, to show her, I can still exercise control over you.
The other people in between, the best we can determine, were just chosen at random, just to try to throw the police off.
As for the word Jack that was left on the notes at the crime scenes, detectives ultimately figured out that it was indeed an acronym that Mr. Lewis had formed from the starting letters of his middle name and his children's names.
While prosecutors build their case against William Charles Lewis, he is determined to beat the 26 charges brought against him. However, an announcement from the DA's office causes him to change his mind.
The state had filed the necessary motions to seek the death penalty.
He waived the right to a jury trial, and he asked the judge to be the trier of fact to determine the sentence in this case.
William Charles Lewis pleaded guilty on all counts, and he was able to avoid the death penalty by doing that. But he was sentenced to life in prison plus 191 years.
When he was sentenced to life, I was mad. I was looking for this man to get the death penalty.
With William Charles Lewis behind bars, the East Point community and the surviving victims finally begin to heal.
Rosa ended up surviving. She was in the hospital for 4 months, but she did recover.
Once she was able to go back to work, she hit the ground running. She did not let this incident keep.
May 29th, 2007. It's the crack of dawn in the Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. For 47-year-old resident Jeffrey Moore, it's a day that seems chock full of possibilities as he makes his way down the street.
He was riding through the neighborhood of Brooklyn, going to visit his family.
But as the city begins to stir and Jeffrey crosses Chauncey Street, he can never imagine what's about to happen.
Come on, hurry up. Oh my God.
Sir, are you okay?
Moments later, 911 dispatchers receive a distressing call from the New York Fire Department.
Somebody ran over there and notified the fire department that there was an accident at the scene. The vehicle fled the location, and EMS was immediately dispatched to the scene.
Apparently, the eyewitness was out on the streets when she saw a speeding car bound off the sidewalk, then peel away. Afterwards, she saw a man splayed out on the ground.
It appears that the victim was run over.
As first responders arrive at the scene, they find the victim unconscious on the sidewalk. That individual is Jeffrey Moore.
There was profuse bleeding. You could tell there was fractures. and it was obvious that he was struck by some type of vehicle.
The emergency medical technicians check his vitals. He was still, breathing, so he was still alive.
Let's get him in the truck and get him stabilized.
Jeffrey is loaded onto an ambulance and raced to the trauma center at Brookdale Hospital. While paramedics fight to keep Jeffrey alive, investigators arrive at the scene of the hit and run.
Hey there, officer.
The victim was transported to Brookdale Hospital. At that time, myself and my partner went to the scene and started detailing what had happened.
Was Jeffrey just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or had someone targeted him?
At that time, we didn't know if this was an accident or a criminal investigation.
But detectives could have never imagined the explosive secrets waiting to be discovered, nor the crescendo of violence that had culminated in one terrible moment.
It's mind-blowing, it's unbelievable to most of us, but sometimes something snaps.
Born in 1960, in the tough streets of East New York, Jeffrey Moore grew up basked in the love of his mother and 10 siblings.
Jeff being the youngest boy out of 11 children, he held kind of a place of special honor.
His mother, who Jeffrey was extremely close to, always kept her eye on her baby boy.
Grandma wouldn't allow nobody to do anything to him.
Friends, family, we all stuck together as one.
Though many of Jeffrey's peers succumbed to the streets at a young age, his family's love and encouragement proved to be a powerful force during Jeffrey's formative years. But Jeffrey also had another passion that kept him on the straight and narrow.
He loved to box. Love. Boxing was his outlet, his way to get away from what was going on around in the neighborhood.
To help keep himself in shape, Jeffrey worked in the construction field after high school. In the years that followed, Jeffrey's athletic physique and undeniable charm proved irresistible to more than a few women.
He was easy to talk to. He was very funny. He was a comedian.
Hey, babe,
how's the fight going?
Hey, babe.
One woman that fell head over heels for Jeffrey was Lisa Tucker.
Lisa also grew up in Brooklyn. They hit it off right away.
Oh, come on, get your hands up.
I didn't know you know anything about boxing, babe.
You know I know about boxing. I can't wait to see you in the ring.
You love Lisa. You love her a lot. And yes, he was happy.
And before long, he realized Lisa was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with.
When he was 20, he got married. He loved Lisa so much.
It looked like Jeffrey was on his way up in the world. However, the truth was far more complicated.
The negative influences in the neighborhood really caught up with Jeffrey.
He was dealing with drug addiction, more specifically crack addiction.
Crack is so addictive. It all becomes about using and getting more.
Look at yourself. You're losing weight. You're never home. You're blowing all of our money.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry doesn't cut it anymore.
As Jeffrey descended deeper into the well of addiction, by the early 90s, Lisa finally made the decision to walk away.
If I was to say what caused my Uncle Jeffrey to, separate from his wife, I would say it would probably be the addiction.
Over the next decade, Jeffrey tried to get clean time and again.
He would try really hard to get himself together, and he would do that for a while, and then something happened, and it would trigger something in him, and he would go back to what he knew.
But by 2005, it looked like Jeffrey had finally kicked his habit for good. From that point forward, family came first.
Hey, Mom.
What's up, sis?
How's it going?
All right.
Hey.
This is about done. Just had to tighten this up a little bit more.
Did you get enough money to pay for everything?
You gave me more than enough. The change is on the counter.
Nah.
He helped me with everything. Clean my home. He loved my mother so much. Whatever he get, he shared with all of us.
And then an unexpected tragedy tore the Moore family apart.
My mother died in 2005.
It was shocking. We knew she was in the hospital, but we thought Grandma was strong. She was the matriarch of the family. She brought us all together.
No one was more devastated by her death than her youngest son, Jeffrey.
It affected him a lot. He didn't care no more. He wanted to be with mother.
It just sent his whole life into like a whirlwind. And he just started back using drugs again.
But just when it looked like Jeffrey couldn't be saved, he met a woman who he called his angel, 25-year-old Janine Harrington.
Janine was a good deal younger than Jeff, but it was love at first sight.
You know, you're the best thing ever happened to me, right?
I feel the same way.
They celebrated their profound love with an equally intense passion.
They couldn't seem to get enough of each other.
And though Jeffrey continued to battle his demons, Janine remained by his side. It appeared that Jeffrey could finally have a fresh start in life, until a speeding vehicle ran him off his road to redemption.
The victim was transported to Brookdale Hospital, where he was declared dead on arrival.
But as investigators dig into his life, they'll discover that Jeffrey Moore was a man fanning the flames of tragedy.
It's a recipe for disaster.
After the heartbreaking loss of his mother in 2005, Jeffrey Moore found the will to live again in the arms of a young woman named Janine Harrington.
Though he had slipped back into drug use, he thought this kind of relationship could change him and make him a better man.
Yes, he was happy. He was getting stuff together.
Then, early in the morning on May 29, 2007, a hit-and-run in Brownsville, Brooklyn, left Jeffrey mortally wounded.
At the scene, he was alive, and apparently he died on the way to the hospital.
News of the tragedy soon reaches his nearby family.
Jeffrey got killed. I just started shaking.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. It was a huge blow.
Back at the crime scene, detectives worked to identify the driver who had fatally struck Jeffrey.
Well, the officer told me that you may have witnessed the accident.
I did.
Among the onlookers in the street that morning is the Good Samaritan who notified the fire department of the incident.
I just came over to see what happened after I heard a crashing sound.
Although the person who witnessed the accident could not provide a description of the driver, they were able to provide to detectives a description of the vehicle.
It was a gray SUV.
They put out one of these bulletins for everyone to be on the lookout for this vehicle.
Examining the evidence at the scene, detectives try to reconstruct Jeffrey's final moments.
You notice blood on brick wall. They also discovered a mangled bike close by on a nearby stoop, which indicated that the bike was involved and he was riding the bike at the time he was hit. And they found drag marks that contained blood.
Which leads detectives to a horrifying conclusion.
This wasn't just a bump and run. This was a hit, drag, and run over.
Streaks of blood on the street indicate that the body was dragged, possibly under the vehicle.
When you pull somebody under the car, it shreds the clothes, it shreds the skin on the back.
If anyone had a choice of how to die, that's not the way to go.
As for why Jeffrey was hit, detectives have several possible theories.
Early morning is a time when people are coming back from a night of partying.
Could have been somebody who was intoxicated.
A large majority of our hit and runs usually involve some type of drug use. A lot of times, people make bad decisions after these accidents. They panic, they don't want to go to jail, so their immediate reaction is to flee.
But given the neighborhood's notorious reputation, detectives also have to consider another angle.
Brownsville has the reputation for being lower income, higher crime, higher drug use areas.
Back in 2007, a large majority of all the homicides that occurred in Brownsville were all drug-related. A lot of times, individuals run up a payment that they cannot cover, and unfortunately, a lot of those people wind up to be homicide victims.
Could someone have intentionally targeted Jeffrey over drugs? That theory begins to gain some traction once detectives run their victim's name through their database.
He had multiple drug arrests and drug sales on his arrest record, so this could be drug-related. So we were looking into any possible retaliation of maybe selling drugs or stealing drugs.
Detectives reach out to their colleagues in the narcotics division to see if they might have any additional information.
It's a well-known drug use area, so a lot of times we have special conditions and cars that stay around the area to keep an eye on the locations. Unfortunately, at this time, when it happened early in the morning, there was nothing available at that time.
Desperate for a lead, detectives reach out to Jeffrey's family to see if they might be ready to talk.
Jeff's sister gave some information about her brother. You know, some things the police didn't know.
And soon, a sordid web of sexual secrets will change the course of the case.
It is really very detailed and very wild.
A few hours have passed since the hit-and-run killing of Brooklyn native Jeffrey Moore. But police still don't know whether his death was accidental or intentional.
Maybe it was a drunk driver who hit him. Maybe it was somebody that was paying him back for a drug deal going wrong.
Detectives are hoping a meeting with Jeffrey Moore's sister, Jade Oliver, will help them focus their investigation.
I know this is a delicate question, but did you know your brother was taking drugs at the time of his death?
Unfortunately, yeah. He relapsed after my mom died and never managed to get clean.
Do you have any problems with money or with a drug dealer?
I don't really know. I don't.
But Jay does know one source of conflict in Jeffrey's life, his girlfriend, Janine Harrington. Though Jade says that her brother claimed to be madly in love with this 25-year-old woman, the family disapproved from day one.
It was a pretty toxic relationship.
Janine was 2 decades younger than Jeff.
She's too young. She's too young. That bottom line, she's too young.
When you think about her age, it's quite obvious that something is wrong all the way around.
To be a younger woman, you kind of see yourself as a prize. And you got these older men that are willing to do whatever to keep you.
But Jade says when she confronted Jeffrey with the family's concerns, he was adamant that Janine just had a preference for older men.
Older men? How do you know she liked older men? That's just your ego talking.
She's already dating one, Jade.
What?
She was living with another guy, and his name was Marshall Carpenter. He and Janine had been together for a long time.
Does he even know about you?
Nah. Janine told him I was her cousin.
And he's stupid enough to believe that.
Relax, it's all good.
All good. You know what? Now you're the stupid one.
Jay said, what you do with somebody with another man? Let that man have her. You don't need her. Leave that girl alone. Get yourself together.
He still loved her and wanted to be with her very much.
But Jade says she thought love was just an excuse for a far greater addiction, one Jeffrey and Janine both allegedly shared.
Like him, she had an addiction to crack.
Janine Harrington had a problem way before she got with my uncle.
You have to wonder how much of that was love and how much of it was a relationship of convenience, i.e. were they doing drugs together?
Then in the spring of 2007, Jade says Jeffrey came to her and her sister with what he thought was good news.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
He told me she was pregnant. I was like, yes.
Janine had told Jeffrey he was the father.
And apparently, Jeffrey was ecstatic.
He didn't have any kids of his own, so he was excited about the baby.
But Jade says she and her sister were horrified. She pointed out that Janine wasn't fit to be a mother.
You're both using crack, remember?
Using crack while you're pregnant is not a good decision at all for the baby.
According to Jade, though, Jeffrey assured his sisters that the baby had motivated him and Janine to get clean once and for all.
He was really, really ready to commit to Janine and this unborn child.
That's when Jade says she brought up the elephant in the room.
Jeff, how do you even know you're the father?
Janine was still involved and living with her other boyfriend.
So there's a possibility that She could have been pregnant by either man.
No matter what, he's gonna kill you when he finds out.
Look, y'all need to chill.
No, you need to wake up.
Jeff's family believed that they could see what he couldn't in terms of his relationship with Janine, but he was a grown man in his 40s, and he was going to do what he wanted to do.
But detectives now fear that Jeffrey may have been the victim of a love triangle gone wrong.
In a relationship, when it's a triangle, it's a lot of jealousy. And with jealousy comes danger.
Being involved in the detective squad, we've seen it numerous times.
Maybe Janine decided that she didn't want Jeffrey around anymore, and she told Jeffrey that Marshall was the father of the baby. Maybe Jeffrey was angry, and he threatened to go to Marshall with the truth, and that was too much for Janine.
Or did Marshall find out that Janine not only had a boyfriend, but was pregnant as well?
Is it my baby? Is it his baby? That could drive a person to making really bad decisions and just completely eliminate the threat to your family.
While detectives hunt down the couple for questioning, a phone call comes in about an SUV matching the description of the vehicle that fled the scene.
The SUV was found within a 6 blocks radius of the actual incident. It was obvious from looking at the vehicle that there were multiple dents, scratches, and blood on the vehicle that was definitely involved in some type of accident.
And when detectives run the plates on the SUV, they make a jaw-dropping discovery.
The vehicle was registered to Marshall Carpenter, Janine Harrington's boyfriend.
Could Marshall Carpenter be the man behind Jeffrey Moore's murder? And if so, was someone else in harm's way?
If he's that angry about her lover, her safety is in danger. She could be next.
After running the plates on the SUV believed to have killed 47-year-old Jeffrey Moore, police in Brooklyn, New York have made a shocking discovery.
It belonged to a man named Marshall Carpenter.
Marshall was the boyfriend of Janine Harrington, Jeffrey Moore's pregnant lover.
And if Marshall had mowed down Jeffrey Moore in a fit of jealous rage, one fear is that Janine could be next.
It's not a stretch to think that Marshall would have gone after her.
After locating an address for Marshall Carpenter and Janine Harrington, police dispatch members of their emergency service unit to the residence.
This unit is trained to respond to high-risk situations. Police didn't know if the suspect could be armed and dangerous or if this could possibly be a hostage situation.
We think this is the vehicle that was in the accident, and we think the suspects are upstairs.
Okay. We're gonna set up a quick perimeter around here, hit the house, see what's going on. Y'all just hang out here, all right?
All right.
But before the special unit officers approach the couple's apartment, a woman pokes her head out of the window of the building.
Hello?
Hey,
Hello? I'd like to talk to you. Hey, let me just get dressed. I'm gonna come down.
Okay. What the heck?
Moments later, the young woman comes outside with an older man.
Show me your hands. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Come down to me. Keep coming. Come to me. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Come on. You too, sir. Come on down. Come on down.
She identifies herself as Janine Harrington, and he gives the name Marshall Carpenter. It's immediately clear she is not afraid of her boyfriend or in any danger.
But police do notice the couple is worn out, and Janine seems to be high on something.
Okay, what's going on?
What Janine blurts out next also surprises officers.
You're here about Jeffrey Moore's accident.
Yes, ma'am.
When police ask the couple if they'd be willing to answer some questions about the case, both willingly agree.
They're transported over to the precinct detective squad so they could be interviewed.
In the squad room, detectives begin by questioning Marshall about his relationship with Jeffrey Moore.
He acknowledges that he knows Jeffrey Moore.
We were pretty friendly. He was at my house all the time.
So how would you describe his relationship with your girlfriend?
Well, they did drugs together. And, well, they was intimate.
Obviously, as Jeffrey's sister suspected, Marshall Carpenter did not believe his girlfriend's lie that Jeffrey was her cousin.
But when detectives ask Marshall how he feels about Janine's illicit behavior, he simply shrugs it off.
Marshall said that he was so in love with Janine that he didn't care what she did on the side.
which makes investigators wonder what he knows about her pregnancy.
Do you know who the father was?
No, she didn't state who the father was. And I told you I loved her. Didn't matter.
Yeah, but what about Mr. Moore? Because, you know, a man in your situation might think about running him over.
People flip and they lose control of all their senses.
We just want to let you know that we're investigating Jeffrey Moore's death as a possible homicide.
He's dead?
When pressed further, Marshall insists he had nothing to do with Jeffrey's death, but he knows who did. According to Marshall, Janine had returned home early this morning, not only high, but also distraught.
Baby, what's up?
I did something terrible.
Janine said she hit Jeffrey by accident with the SUV, then panicked and fled the scene.
You gotta turn yourself in.
No,
You gotta do the right thing. You gotta do the right thing. I love you.
I'm scared.
Of course, detectives have good reason to doubt Marshall's story.
It was Marshall's SUV that killed Jeff.
Police weren't blind to the fact that there were numerous reasons why Marshall might make up a story like this. Perhaps he was Janine's accomplice and loaned her the SUV to get rid of Jeffrey. Or possibly he was the killer and trying to lay blame on Janine and make her pay for what she had put him through.
Police hope getting Janine's side of the story will shed some light on the truth. But she's hardly in ideal shape for an interview.
Janine, tell us about your relationship with Jeffrey Moore. Miss Harrington!
Huh? What was the question?
She was nodding off. She said she hadn't slept in hours, like in 24 hours. She even said she had been smoking crack.
In an attempt to get Janine to focus, detectives revealed to her the tragic truth about Jeffrey.
He's dead, Miss Harrington.
Oh, God. No,
She was distraught and she was crying.
no, I loved him so much. I didn't.
Janine, calm down. Tell us about the events that happened this morning.
Yeah, okay.
The beginning of Janine's story appears to corroborate what her boyfriend already told them.
She said she had borrowed his SUV the night before to see Jeffrey.
She said they got the crack cocaine.
And says she and Jeffrey smoked all night long.
But Janine says that come morning, the couple still wanted another fix.
They spoke about getting some crack cocaine and splitting it up.
Janine explains that after they made the purchase that morning, Jeffrey suddenly reneged on the deal.
Jeffrey chose to keep a majority of the drug that they purchased.
Get back here!
I gotta go!
I know you took it! Get back here!
Took what? I gotta go!
Get back! Where the hell you think you're going? Get back!
Jeffrey got on his bicycle and started traveling westbound on Chauncey. Janine got angry and got into the vehicle.
She said her intention was really to follow closely enough behind him, just to scare him.
And then something went horribly wrong.
She drove towards Jeffrey. She went to hit the brake pedal, but instead hit the gas and struck Jeffrey on the bicycle. And pushed him numerous feet into a brick wall and back down to the street and then fled the scene.
She said she was smoking crack, so she wasn't, in her right mind.
After hearing Janine's story, detectives ask her if she'll go on record with her version of the events.
After reading her Miranda warnings, she agreed to everything.
But by this time, Janine is crashing fast.
Janine.
Yeah.
She was able to answer the answers, but she had to be woken up several times during the interview.
Stay with us, Janine. Come on. We need to get this.
And despite the confession, detectives still aren't sure they fully believe their suspect's story.
She knows she did something terribly wrong, and now it's just let me cover myself.
Then there's the question of Janine's boyfriend and what he may or may not know about Jeffrey's death.
Marshall Carpenter, Janine's boyfriend, I would imagine was really heartbroken about the situation. I could see where that would be a reason for him to want to go after Jeff.
They obviously knew why the police had showed up at their doorstep. They could have concocted Janine's whole story.
For police, though, it's all just speculation, and what detectives need now is more evidence.
At this point, they don't know what to charge Janine with. Murder, manslaughter, accomplice, or accessory after the fact.
Until a witness comes forward who says he saw exactly what happened.
You hit somebody with a 2-ton car. It's just like you point a gun at somebody.
Imagine this, a mild to moderate eczema treatment that targets inflammation at a key source right where you need it, without steroids. Nailed it. Imagine using one single cream to help clear skin and kick the itch. Oh, it's not imaginary. It's Opzelura, eczema treatment reimagined. Opzelura is proven to help clear or almost clear skin and significantly reduce itch fast. Imagine that.
Opzelura can lower your ability to fight infections. Tell your doctor if you have or had an infection, TB, hepatitis B or C, blood clots in your legs or lungs, heart attack, stroke, cancer, high cholesterol, are a smoker or pregnant. Opzelura may cause serious lung infections, certain cancers, immune system problems, blood clots, and low blood cell counts. Major cardiovascular events or death occurred in those 50+ taking oral JAK inhibitors. The most common side effect was the common cold.
Ask your eczema specialist about reducing itch fast with Opzelura. Relief reimagined.
Less than 12 hours after police in Brooklyn, New York began investigating the hit-and-run death of 47-year-old Jeffrey Moore, Janine Harrington, the victim's pregnant lover, admitted to accidentally killing him.
She was under the influence of crack. She was not thinking clearly.
She said she mistook the gas pedal for the brake pedal.
But detectives don't know if Janine is telling the truth.
What if she's covering for her boyfriend she took to hell and back? What if she's saying it was an accident to get a lighter sentence?
As investigators scour the neighborhood, they soon catch what looks like a lucky break.
They find this individual, Rashawn James, and he lived in an apartment building that directly overlooked where the hit and run occurred.
Did you happen to have witnessed it by chance? Yeah, I was looking out my window. I saw everything. It was plain as day.
Rashawn says he saw this man riding down the street on his bike.
Suddenly, out of nowhere, an SUV comes barreling down the wrong way on a one-way street.
He then says that the man on the bicycle rode onto the sidewalk and the vehicle followed.
Then the vehicle struck the victim while he was on his bicycle. The SUV pushed him numerous feet into a brick wall.
The person driving realized that the bike that the victim was driving was trapped underneath the SUV.
Then she got out of the car. She was standing over him. She was crying.
Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no.
Rashawn's description of the woman matched Janine Harrington to a T.
But it's what Rashawn claims Janine did next that floors detectives.
The next thing you know, she pulls the bike out from there. She throws it in the street, backs up, runs him back over, and then she fled down the street.
It's a horrifying description, starkly at odds with Janine's version of the events.
She said she accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake, but Mr. Moore was dragged 50 feet. A decision could have been made to hit the brake after that. And then she had it in her mind to get out of the vehicle, pull a bicycle out that was stuck, then run over the victim for the second time. To me, that's intentional.
Thank you for your time, sir.
After hearing the witness's story, detectives finally rule Marshall Carpenter out as the killer.
Marshall Carpenter was eliminated as a suspect for the simple fact that the witness stated that there was a woman driving.
Though detectives continued to investigate him as a possible accessory, they never found any evidence that he helped Janine or even knew about her intentions in advance.
Less than 24 hours after Jeffrey Moore's killing, Janine Harrington is arrested on charges of second-degree murder. But for the victim's family, knowing Janine is behind bars does little to stem their pain.
My family have really, really suffered from this. We're still trying to mend the wounds.
As the case moves to trial, detectives continue gathering evidence against Janine.
They uncovered a lot of stories from friends and acquaintances about Janine's violent behavior towards Jeffrey.
From what I heard, when they get their little arguments, she hit him with pot, bat, pen, and stuff like that.
And according to these witnesses, this wasn't the first time she had tried to hit Jeffrey with a car.
3 weeks before, she tried to run him over.
Though Janine initially claimed that drugs made her drive recklessly, it seems more likely they amplified her already hostile feelings toward her boyfriend.
Drugs enhance whatever feelings you have. So if you're angry, it was going to take it to the next level. It just magnified the rage or the anger to the 10th degree.
But if Janine's lawyers have their say, she may never go to trial.
They had a hearing, determine whether her confession was given under the right circumstances.
The defense's theory is she wasn't of sound mind, she was high, and she had been deprived of sleep.
Janine. It's the basic constitutional law that the amendment protects you from self-incrimination. And based upon the fact that you were under the influence, you can make an argument that you weren't doing it knowingly, intelligently, voluntarily.
While prosecutors don't dispute the defense's claim about Janine's inebriated state, they claim that her videotaped confession is incontrovertible proof that Janine understood exactly what she was confessing to on May 29, 2007.
We asked her if she would be able to write her statement down. She agreed to everything and signed them.
On August 26, 2009, when the judge renders his decision, he sides with the district attorney.
He basically said she knew where she was, she knew what she was doing. He determined that she was coherent enough to give a voluntary statement.
And though it's a win for Jeffrey Moore's loved ones, Janine Harrington is about to deliver another punch to the stomach.
She didn't care what she did to him. She mean and evil. That's what she was.
Less than 24 hours after the hit-and-run killing of her lover, Jeffrey Moore, 25-year-old Janine Harrington found herself behind bars and facing a second-degree murder charge.
Janine's story to police was that she hit him accidentally while under the influence of drugs. The witness testimony says she hit him intentionally, then lied to police.
And now, Janine is about to be unmasked for yet another deception.
After Janine was locked up, everybody was waiting to find out whether the baby was Jeffrey's or her boyfriend's. As it turns out, she isn't pregnant, and maybe she never was.
It's a suspicion Jeffrey's family has long held.
He told me she was pregnant. And when I saw her at my sister's house for the first time, that girl ain't pregnant, she look pregnant to me. Like that.
Some women use this as a manipulation tactic or tool to get what they want from the men, either to keep them in a relationship or to get things, money or whatever.
She pretends she was pregnant to keep him around her. So, because we already told him to stay away from her. So that's when she used the pregnant line.
On July 9th, 2009, when Janine's trial begins, the Brooklyn courtroom is filled with supporters for both sides.
My mom and the rest of my Uncle Jeffrey's siblings went.
Janine's boyfriend, Marshall, was there too. He stuck by her. The man really meant what he said when he told police that he would love his girlfriend no matter what she did.
In their opening arguments, prosecutors highlight Janine's increasing threats and actions against Jeffrey in the weeks preceding his death.
There was pressure mounting in their relationship that was causing her to lash out. Maybe it was the drugs. Maybe it was Jeffrey's sisters telling him to stay away from her. Maybe it was a combination of both.
Prosecutors say either way, what happened on the morning of May 29, 2007 was no accident. They assert that after an overnight drug binge, Janine finally went over the precipice.
Janine was allegedly angry at Jeffrey for hoarding drugs that morning. The drug issue really amplified emotions.
Her attitude was she wasn't going to be denied the drugs, and she was going to get her revenge. This would be called a passionate crime. There's some kind of anger, some kind of emotional attachment to this individual. That's why she would do this.
To prove that the killing was an intentional act, prosecutors call Rashawn James to the stand to describe what he saw the morning Jeffrey Moore was murdered.
He saw a woman run him over, get out of the car, then run him over again.
And when the medical examiner testifies, he suggests that Jeffrey might have survived had Janine not run him over a second time.
It was probably the time that he took the hardest impact to the vehicle, which probably caused his death.
But the defense counters that while Janine was guilty of driving under the influence, she wasn't a calculated killer.
All of this happened as a result of Janine's drug addiction. It was an accident based on her not being in the proper headspace.
In an attempt to prove their competing narratives, the prosecution and defense both play portions of Janine's videotaped confession.
The jury was able to see her demeanor, how the questions were posed to her, the demeanor of the police officers, and that basically gave them something to make their decision on.
But which version of the story will the jury believe?
The jury came back with a verdict of guilty, but on a reduced charge of second-degree manslaughter.
That basically meant the jury accepted the defense's argument that this killing resulted from Janine's reckless drug use rather than a maliciously conceived criminal act.
She might think she get away with it now, but she got to deal with God. Come around and go around.
At the sentencing on August 26, 2009, Jeffrey's sister Jade makes an impassioned plea to the judge to sentence Janine as harshly as possible.
She said that this crime really ripped the family apart and it ruined their lives.
She didn't hate Janine, but she thought she was very evil and that she should go to jail for this.
But when the judge asks the defendant if she'd like to say anything, she declines.
Janine Harrington didn't apologize to the family, didn't show any remorse.
She didn't care what she did to him.
Under the sentencing guidelines for manslaughter, the judge hands down a relatively harsh sentence.
The range was 3.5 to 15 years, and she ended up getting 5 to 15.
I don't know if justice was served. I just know that I don't have an uncle anymore, and I don't know why. That's all I know.
For Janine's boyfriend, Marshall Carpenter, it's a sad ending to their already troubled story.
Marshall Carpenter is without a girlfriend, and he's trying to proceed with his life.
But moving on feels almost impossible to the Moore family.
I miss them a lot. I miss seeing them and the family together.
Nothing can ever bring Jeff Moore back, and that's a difficult thing.
Thursday, November 18th, 2010. It's just after 6:30 p.m. in East Orange, New Jersey, and the roads are filled with motorists commuting home.
It was dark and wet outside.
For 33-year-old motorist Andrew Baker, today seems like any other day. But as Andrew pulls up to a stoplight at the intersection of Central Avenue and Orden Parkway, that all changes in the blink of an eye.
A Range Rover at full speed just rams into the back of him.
Still reeling from the shock of the accident, Andrew dials 911.
I've been in an accident. Please send help right away.
First responders arrive at the scene within minutes.
So, you okay?
I'm a little dazed, but I think I'm okay.
Okay, we have an ambulance coming for you, so just sit tight for me, okay? All right.
The police see that Andrew's okay, and they go to check on the occupant of this Range Rover.
Sir! Sir, can you hear me? It's the police!
The victim is unresponsive, slumped over the steering wheel, and the doors are locked.
Hey, I'm gonna have to break the window.
So I had to shatter the window to gain the entry to be able to assess the situation and render medical assistance.
They found out that not only was he unconscious, that he was not breathing.
It is then that the officer makes a startling discovery.
There was a puncture wound in the chest. It's unknown what caused the wound. It could have been a gunshot wound.
As they wait for EMS to arrive, the second officer checks the vehicle for identification and finds the man's driver's license. The victim is 39-year-old Floyd McLean.
But as Floyd is raced to the hospital, investigators will soon discover their suspicions are true. This is no ordinary car crash. Hiding amidst the wreckage is the story of a life led astray by temptation and all the dangers that come with it.
That information was pretty surprising for the investigators. I think everyone was in shock. It was so unexpected.
Originally from Georgetown, Guyana, Floyd McLean immigrated to the United States at a young age with his mother and siblings.
They saw the United States as a country where they could make a much better life for themselves.
Floyd and his family ultimately settled in the Newark, New Jersey area, where Floyd attended Irvington High School.
While at high school, Floyd was an extrovert, very social. He always found himself to be the center of attention.
When he was around, you would always have a good time.
It came as no surprise to his family and friends that Floyd aspired to one day be a salesman.
His ultimate dream was not just to sell, but to open a store. He had all the attributes of a salesman. He knew how to engage any individual and keep them interested in him.
Floyd's innate charm and larger-than-life personality was a big hit with the ladies, and he never suffered from a shortage of dates.
However, by his mid-20s, there was someone Floyd just couldn't seem to win over. Annette Williams, a young woman from Jamaica who lived down the street.
He always tried to watch for me. He would never leave me alone, no matter how hard I tried.
Floyd was intrigued by Annette. He kept asking her out, and she kept turning him down.
But one night in 1994, Floyd's persistence paid off.
I went to a little party, and he was there. And he still wouldn't leave me alone until, we started talking.
About time we get to know one another.
I don't know. We'll see.
Me like that.
That night, Annette realized she had more in common with Floyd than she originally thought.
He had come to this country from Guyana. Annette had come to this country from Jamaica. So they both shared some similar ideals, both seeking to make a better life for themselves in a new land.
Once the spark between Annette and Floyd finally ignited, it soon kindled a fire of another sort.
We were loving and stuff like that a lot. He wouldn't probably let me breathe, I think he was always over me.
After several years together, the young couple learned they were expecting a son.
Shortly after finding out that she was pregnant, Floyd made a decision that Annette was going to be the woman for him, forever.
In 1996, Annette gave birth to their beloved son, Floyd Jr.
When little Floyd was born, he gave me a ring.
For Annette and Floyd, this ring symbolized a commitment to one another as powerful as the bonds of a sanctified marriage. And in the years that followed, their family grew.
I was their first kid together. And then after that, it was my little brother and little sister.
He was a very loving father. He loved his kids. He would play with them. He would joke around with them.
Determined to provide a good life for his family, in 2003, Floyd fulfilled a lifelong dream when he opened up his own shoe store.
You like those?
I do, yeah.
He always wanted to open a store. He always wanted to do his own business.
He became that entrepreneur he wanted to be.
The store made him happy because he was a people person. He liked to meet people. He liked to talk to people.
May I help you with those?
Yes, please.
Very nice. They look good on ya.
Thank you.
The store grew and grew and grew, but it took away from some of the quality time that he was going to be able to spend with his family.
After a while, it was becoming very stressful for him. It was really hard to find help to do it and do it as passionately as he would.
And at some point, the cost of doing business started to outweigh the profitability.
In April of 2010, after 7 years in business, Floyd made the decision to close his store. He subsequently took a job at a local flour mill to help supplement the family's income.
Annette and Floyd decided to make the best of it. It meant that he had more time to spend with the family.
He was home and he was trying to be there with us. We'll do things together, even just to sit on this step together.
But their familial bliss would be short-lived as Floyd found himself in the fight of his life on November 18th, 2010.
After Floyd's car accident, he was rushed to the hospital. EMTs and doctors did everything in their power to try to save him, but it was too late.
Floyd McLean was pronounced dead at University Hospital.
And though doctors still don't know the exact cause of Floyd's death, they do feel certain of one thing. Floyd didn't die from injuries sustained in his car crash.
It was clear to them that there was a mortal wound that was inflicted, and it was not inflicted as a result of this car accident.
They believed that it may have been a gunshot wound.
Suddenly, police realized that they have a homicide on their hands.
CVS decided to stop selling tobacco and tobacco-related products within their stores. As a store manager for them, I was excited and also nervous. I wanted to quit smoking and I thought this might be the right time. It changed my life. It allowed me to stop smoking at the same time that CVS stopped selling cigarettes and put value into my life and to see that I was worth it.
En Metro, obtén 4 líneas por $25 cada una y 4 teléfonos Samsung Galaxy A15 5G gratis. Es muy fácil. No se requiere ID ni cargos de activación. Obtén un número nuevo o trae el tuyo. 4 líneas por $25 la línea y 4 teléfonos Samsung gratis. Visita una tienda en nuestra página web o llámanos. Solo en Metro.
After sharing 16 years and raising 3 children, longtime partners Floyd McLean and Annette Williams were looking forward to slowing down and growing old together.
We always say to each other, no, we coming in our 40s. That's when we really gonna go out and enjoy ourselves.
However, their future plans were cut tragically short when 39-year-old Floyd was rushed to the hospital following a car accident.
It was there that he was pronounced deceased.
Doctors examined the suspicious puncture in Floyd's chest that officers initially discovered at the scene. They believed it was a gunshot wound, and so from there, an autopsy was ordered.
Back at the crime scene, homicide detectives begin the search for clues.
They go out and start with the scene. The scene tells you what happened. There were no bullet holes in the window, in the windshield, or anywhere in the car. So they determined that it could have been possibly the crime scene was somewhere else.
They'd search that car for any ballistic evidence or any other weapons or drugs, anything that may help determine what happened.
In the back of the vehicle, there are 3 or 4 pairs of sneakers.
These sneakers, they're brand new, high-end, they're expensive. They're the type of shoes that somebody might think is worth stealing.
And shoes aren't the only item of value.
He's driving not just any car, but a Range Rover, a new one.
A potential motive could have been robbery or even a carjacking.
While detectives ponder a motive, the location of Floyd's car crash only amplifies the tragedy of his death.
When you look at the crime scene, you see that where Floyd eventually crashed his vehicle, right behind the car was East Orange General Hospital.
He must have been shot in another location and was driving himself to the hospital.
But from where had Floyd come? As police continue to process the scene, detectives begin the task of tracking down the victim's next of kin in the hopes they might know more.
We ran the registration of the vehicle that the victim was in and came back to Annette Williams.
Howdy, sir. McLean residence?
Yes.
Is your mother around?
Yes. Mom?
Who is it?
2 detectives?
Yes.
Can we come in and speak with you for a second?
Yes.
We then asked her if she, in fact, did have a vehicle registered to her. She said it was hers, and her boyfriend drives the vehicle.
They came into our living room, and I remember them saying that my father got into a car accident.
There's no easy way to tell you this. Floyd passed away.
I was so confused, and I didn't know what to do.
It hurt me. It hurt everyone.
However, Annette manages to keep her composure in front of investigators, arousing suspicion.
She did not show him much grief at all.
Her reactions may not have been what someone might think a normal reaction is when you tell someone your loved one has just been killed.
Could Annette know more than she's letting on?
Police aren't sure whether Annette is just in shock or if she has something to hide.
It's pretty common to look at the significant other. It could be a domestic incident.
The police might be looking in the face of the killer.
Detectives ask Annette to accompany them for further questioning.
They took me to the police station. They do fingerprint, everything.
Mrs. Williams, we'd like to thank you for coming in to speak with us.
When we first spoke with Annette, we wanted to try to obtain as much information about the victim as possible.
Do you know of anyone who would have been angry with Floyd?
I don't know. Everyone loved Floyd.
She didn't have much information to provide us regarding those issues.
They asked her what he had been doing that evening, and she said she didn't really know. He had just told her he was going out.
According to Annette, Floyd left their house around 6 p.m.
They keep going back and forth, and I was just sitting there. And they come back again and ask me the same question over and over again.
You're telling me you don't know where he was going?
No, I don't know where he was going.
Well, I'm sorry, but I find that hard to believe.
Please, I'm telling you the truth. I don't know where he was going. He wouldn't tell me.
Are you sure about that?
I'm telling you the truth.
That's when I broke down.
He would...
Miss Williams.
It was too much for me. They were like pushing me because they want to get answer, but I wasn't a criminal.
You okay, Miss Williams?
Yes.
That night, detectives allow Annette to return home. But is Annette's account the truth? Or is her reaction a well-timed, dramatic turn?
Little did I know that there was something else going on.
Cell phone records paint us a beautiful picture of the person's activity leading up to the murder.
After notifying Annette Williams that her partner of over 16 years, 39-year-old Floyd McLean, had been murdered, detectives were alarmed by Annette's stoic reaction to the news of his death.
Miss Williams didn't show a lot of grief. Detective Foti was suspicious of whether or not she was involved.
But while there's no evidence to connect Annette to Floyd's death, investigators are determined to leave no stone unturned.
Investigators are looking for leads, and they turn their attention to Floyd's cell phone, which was recovered from his vehicle.
We do what's called a CDW on a search warrant, and that gives us a list of calls and text messages.
They found 2 numbers in the last hour before he was killed. In particular, one of the calls came in 10 minutes before the crash.
One number belonged to a Larry Holmes, and another number belonged to a Jane Compton.
At 2 a.m., detectives arrive at the residence of Larry Holmes.
Morning, sir.
How can I help?
You Mr. Holmes?
Yes,
Larry Holmes?
that's me.
Are you familiar with a Floyd McLean?
He's my friend.
Sorry to inform you, sir. He passed away a few hours ago. Car accident.
He was upset upon hearing that his friend had been killed. Honestly, he seemed more upset than Miss Williams did initially.
Larry immediately agreed to accompany the police down to the station. He sat down for an interview.
Mr. Holmes, I want to thank you for coming in to talk with us. Can you tell us the last time you saw Floyd?
He came to see me earlier today.
Okay, and what exactly was the nature of the visit?
It was just a friendly visit.
He got a little vague, and police got the sense that he was hiding something.
His unwillingness to reveal all that had taken place between he and Floyd was puzzling to the police.
You know what? How about I just take your butt right out there and fingerprint you right now? Charge you with murder.
No.
I ain't got time for this right now.
Look.
Finally, Larry comes clean and reveals the real reason they decided to meet on the night of November 18th.
He was candid and admitted that, hey, I met with Floyd, and the purpose was he came to sell me weed.
Larry told police that Floyd had shown up to his house at around 6:18 p.m., and the drug transaction lasted between 5 and 10 minutes.
What's up, my dude? What's going on? Bless.
Upon discovering that Floyd McLean was going to sell drugs to Larry, it kind of changes the focus of a homicide investigation when now you're introducing another potential motive or aspect that we need to follow up.
Although Larry claimed that their meetup ended just minutes after Floyd called him, detectives remind him that he called Floyd again at 6:26 p.m., just 10 minutes before the car accident.
The last incoming call to our victim happened to be a butt dial, an accidental dial. Based on the length of the conversation, we believed it to be true.
Although detectives are able to corroborate Larry's version of events, the question remains, where had Floyd gone after their meeting?
Larry also told police that when Floyd left, he had been on his way to sell someone a pair of shoes, but he didn't specify who or where.
When my dad closed his store, he had a lot of extra things that went down to our basement. So because people knew that he had sold shoes, they would always ask him, hey, do you have this and that? So he kept selling things.
Being he was selling high-end sneakers or dealing in marijuana, you just don't know what you're dealing with. So it was open to anything at that point.
It can at times be violent. Drug dealers do succumb to being attacked.
With that lead dead, detectives dig back into Floyd's cell phone records.
The second to last call was from a female named Jane.
She was vital for us to talk to because she was speaking to this guy on the telephone just 10 or 15 minutes prior to dying.
When they called that number, nobody answered. So ultimately, they looked up the information associated with that number and they found she lived in East Orange on Webster Place.
The next morning, detectives drive to Jane Compton's apartment in hopes they'll find her there.
We knocked on the door, no one's home. We did a canvass of the building to try to see if there was any witnesses.
They found the building superintendent, and they asked him if he had seen anything out of the ordinary, and he said no.
But the super says he did find something unexpected on the ground outside the apartment complex.
The superintendent said, hey, while I was cleaning up, I found a sneaker box just thrown on the ground.
Brand new pair of Nike shoes?
Yeah, I put them down in the trash. I can take you where they are if you want.
Superintendent accompanied the police to that particular trash can, and lo and behold, that sneaker and that box were still there.
They were new Nike sneakers that were similar to the sneakers that were found in our victim, Floyd McLean's car.
While detectives believe the sneakers and phone records allude to Floyd being at the complex, they need hard evidence to prove it.
We've noticed city cameras. So what my idea was is to let's follow these city cameras and see if we could capture Mr. McLean's car leaving this scene and getting from this point to where he crashed.
And sure enough, detectives are able to trace Floyd's vehicle from the scene of the accident back to Jane Compton's apartment complex.
It confirmed the story that he was there at Webster Place to meet with Jane and deliver sneakers.
Now detectives are wondering where Jane Compton is and if she had some motive to harm Floyd McLean.
At that point, we just don't know what we have. Jane is a potential person of interest.
But before detectives can move forward with their new lead, they receive word that Floyd's autopsy is complete, and the results are not what they expect.
The results of that autopsy were mind-blowing.
Less than 12 hours after 39-year-old Floyd McLean was pronounced dead in a New Jersey hospital, detectives have retraced his fateful steps that day to an apartment complex in East Orange and to a mysterious woman named Jane Compton.
The story was that Floyd was driving to the apartment that day to sell someone shoes. But was this really about shoes or something else entirely? And what role does Jane Compton play in all of this?
Why is this individual who is pretty much a everyday guy working and selling clothing, why is this guy winding up dead?
One very real possibility is that Floyd's death may be drug-related, since he had allegedly sold marijuana to at least one man that night.
Anytime that you're involved in any kind of drug dealing, there's always a chance that you can wind up on the bad end of that.
Just as investigators begin to look into this potential lead further, they receive word that Floyd's autopsy is complete.
Homicide.
The medical examiner's findings were startling.
Really?
he had died not from the car accident, not from a gunshot wound, but from a stab wound to the chest, directly to the heart.
For investigators, it's a potentially important clue.
A gunshot wound can be taken from 100 yards away. A stab wound has got to happen at arm's length. And so now we're looking to find someone that he was in some close combat with, or at least was comfortable being near.
Realizing there might be a hidden layer to this case, detectives returned to speak with Floyd's fiancée, Annette Williams.
Listen, Annette, I appreciate you letting us come out and talk to you again. I'm just trying to put the puzzle pieces together, figure it all out.
We wanted to learn as much information as possible. We wanted to know if he had been in any arguments and how their relationship was. Was he seeing someone else on the side?
It is then that Annette finally breaks down and reveals the truth.
He wasn't the most loyal partner.
He was just such 100% cheater.
The decedent had multiple affairs with various women.
According to Annette, it all began after Floyd opened his shoe store in 2003.
Since he got the store, that's when all the problem came from.
Not only was it a vehicle which provided for his family, it was also the center of where he had a lot of lady friends.
He tried to keep me away from people, so I wouldn't even know what's going on.
Now that investigators know the truth, they can't help but wonder again about the woman sitting across from them.
The police are looking at Annette, just being fed up with everything that Floyd may have put her through.
However, Annette firmly denies having any involvement with Floyd's murder.
You done something to your husband. Now's the time to let us know.
No, he was a cheater. But he was a good father, and I would never hurt our children.
She was in it for not only Floyd, but for the sake of the children, because he was a great father.
He loved his kids. It doesn't matter what we have in together. He was a loving father, like 100%. I have nothing to say bad about that. I always wanted to have my kids for one person. So that's one of the things, too, while I was with him for so long.
She stated, look, he has a lot of girlfriends. Some of them have boyfriends and some of them have husbands. Any one of them could have been mad at him.
It could be a jealous lover. It could be a jealous husband. It could be a scorned lover.
Going off a hunch, detectives decide to ask Annette about Jane Compton, one of the last individuals to speak to Floyd.
Does the name Jane Compton ring a bell?
Yes.
When Detective Fody initially spoke to Annette Williams, she did know that there was a relationship between Floyd and Jane.
Jane has become the biggest suspect in the case, and police wanted to talk to her immediately.
We have our ways of finding family members and friends, and so we spoke to family members, and we found that she went to Jamaica.
That immediately sent up a lot of red flags.
Here's a girl whose possible boyfriend had just been stabbed to death, and she's on a plane heading to Jamaica. Who would think that she's not involved?
As detectives work to get Jane back into the country for questioning, emotions run high. Will they be able to solve their case, or will Floyd's killer manage to escape justice?
I'm hoping that she can help us solve this man's murder.
While investigating the murder of 39-year-old Floyd McLean, detectives have discovered that Floyd's 16-year-long relationship with Annette Williams was riddled with infidelity.
He was a cheater. He liked a lot of girls.
Using cell phone records, surveillance footage, and Annette's statements, investigators learn that Floyd may have been with one of his mistresses, Jane Compton, only minutes before dying.
At the end of the day, she was with him last. She knows what happened.
But now Jane is in Jamaica, and detectives can't help but think the timing of her trip is more than a little suspicious.
Why is this girl not in the country anymore?
She's a person of interest.
How can police track down one woman on a large Caribbean island? For that, investigators turn to Jane's cell phone records.
We ended up getting her subscriber information, obtaining her address, and then getting family members' names.
Yes, I'm trying to get a hold of Jane Compton.
When investigators finally make contact, Jane explains that her trip to Jamaica had been planned for some time.
She said she was in Jamaica with her family.
I've got some questions for you about a Floyd McLean. Is there any way you can let me know the minute you get back from Jamaica to New Jersey?
She let on that she knew that Mr. McLean had died.
She agreed to make contact with the detective as soon as she came back.
On November 23rd, 5 days into the investigation, detectives finally come face to face with the elusive Jane Compton.
I didn't know what she was going to say, to be honest. I didn't know she was going to say, I killed him because he was cheating with another girl.
Can you tell us about your relationship with Floyd?
Sure. When the police first started talking to Jane, she was a little nervous and hesitant, but eventually she opened up and told them what they needed to know.
According to Jane, her relationship with Floyd began in 2005.
I met him when I was 21 years old. Me and my uncle were shopping for shoes.
Floyd.
Leroy,
man, how you doing today?
We're not bad at all.
Good, good, good.
And who is this lovely lady you have with you?
I'm Jane. Nice to meet you.
The pleasure's all mine, Miss Jane.
Floyd and Jane began having an affair that lasted several years. At the time, Floyd was with Annette and Jane was dating a different guy, Justin Hazel.
He was still with Annette, and I was with my boyfriend, Justin. After a few years, we just couldn't do it anymore. We didn't feel it was fair to our significant others, so we cut it off.
As for their planned rendezvous on November 18th, Jane says rekindling their romance was the last thing on either one of their minds.
They had been communicating by telephone for really the sole purpose of Floyd selling her some sneakers. She wanted some of Floyd's sneakers to take back to Jamaica to give to her uncle.
Oh, it's been a long time, you know? You still look beautiful as always.
Whatever. I've been trying to get ready to go to Jamaica all day.
Oh, bless up. Well, let me show what me brought. Say I can pick one, you know? Right there.
Yeah.
You like, right?
She was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, picking out the pair of shoes that she wanted, when she saw her boyfriend, Justin Hazel, walking down the street on his way home.
Wagwan.
Yeah, it's my boyfriend, Justin.
No, everything is all right.
No, everything is not all right.
So what's going on here?
Justin, calm down, please.
He immediately became very angry when he saw the two of them in the car together.
I'm just trying to buy some shoes.
You buy no shoes? What's up? You gonna lie to me now?
I'm not lying to you. I would not lie to you. I'm just telling.
He ended up kicking her in the stomach and kicking her down to the ground.
Floyd never got out of the car. He stayed in the driver's seat and wasn't looking for any problems.
According to Jane, though, Justin had other ideas.
Justin leaves Jane and goes around the vehicle to the driver's side.
Relax now, brother. I'm not here for trouble, no, man.
What you mean no trouble, man? You see with my girl?
No, man, I care about shoes, man.
What you mean you buying some shoes?
Jane observes hands going back and forth.
He just started punching him, and he was like screaming. It was crazy.
At that point, Justin's cousin was walking by and saw him and tried to pull Justin off of Floyd, and Floyd just drives away.
Jane says after Floyd fled the scene, her argument with Justin continued.
Let's go. Let's go.
They continue to argue as they go up into the apartment building. Jane still has these sneakers. Justin takes this box, he throws them outside.
She states to us that she sees what appears to be either a knife or some shiny object protruding from his hand.
For investigators, that stunning detail can only lead to one conclusion.
This wasn't a punch. This was him reaching through the door and stabbing him right in the heart.
Justin just left the apartment. So she just set off to continue to pack and go on her trip, not knowing at that time that Mr. McLean had been stabbed and was dying or dead. She just thought it was a fight, but he didn't kill him.
According to Jane, she didn't learn of Floyd's death until she landed in Jamaica. But is she telling the truth?
She didn't really waver. She wasn't overly emotional. She just basically laid it out as it happened. 100% I believed her.
But if Justin Hazel is responsible for Floyd McLean's death, why had he lashed out so angrily on that fateful day?
The way Jane explains it to us is that they were friends, but Justin was a jealous boyfriend, and he didn't see them as friends.
Justin knew about this relationship the two of them had in the past, but apparently she had told Justin that there was no more relationship between the two of them. But when she's sitting in the car and she sees Justin, he immediately became very angry. Detectives realized, hey, this is our guy. Justin Hazel killed him.
So our thing is, hey, we got him. We got him.
But as police swarmed the streets in search of Justin Hazel, will his girlfriend's testimony really be enough to convict him?
We only had one witness, which is Jane. And witnesses, sometimes they change their story, they disappear.
Nearly 1 week into the murder investigation of 39-year-old Floyd McLean, New Jersey detectives have learned that his former mistress, Jane Compton, witnessed her boyfriend, 25-year-old Justin Hazel, accost Floyd in a jealous rage.
Once the police had Jane's story, they felt confident that they knew who their suspect was, that all the pieces fit together, and that they were looking for Justin Hazel.
While police search the streets for Justin, investigators attempt to locate the murder weapon.
The police have a search warrant for Justin's apartment, and they go and collect all the knives that he has to see if one of them would be a match for the murder weapon.
Unfortunately, the knives that were in the apartment were your everyday steak knives, and none of those knives came back with any type of evidence on them.
Despite being unable to find the knife used to kill Floyd, the DA feels confident there is enough to prosecute.
They had all of this information from the cell phone records and the traffic cameras that really added up to a solid case for them.
They immediately went to a judge and they got an arrest warrant issued for Justin Hazel. They had been to his apartment looking for him. Apparently word had gotten to him that detectives already had a warrant, so he turned himself in on December 7th.
I was very relieved that it happened, because if this man was out, then he could have hurt us too.
The case goes to court on September 11th, 2012. As opening arguments get underway, the narrative prosecutors weave is one of a man who formed the purposeful intent to kill Floyd McLean on that fateful November evening in 2010.
He took a knife and plunged it into the heart of another man.
But what's noticeably missing from this recitation of facts is any mention of Floyd and Jane's previous relationship. For prosecutors, it's intentional.
Justin Hazel was charged with murder, but there are lesser included offenses that can be put to the jury. Aggravated manslaughter, reckless manslaughter, and of course this passion provocation. In other words, that's an intentional killing of somebody, but somewhat excused. You know, the classic example is a man comes home from work and finds his wife in bed with another man, and he loses it.
If you start to engage all of the passions, it could drop the culpability of the individuals ultimately found guilty down to manslaughter.
In New Jersey, a murder conviction will get you 30 years to life. Under passion provocation, that number gets reduced to anywhere between 5 years and 10 years.
The prosecutor just decided to stay away from all the lover stuff, trying to stay away from all aspects of the case that dealt with passion and emotions, because he wanted to present a case of a clear thinker, meaning Justin as the clear thinker, Justin as engaged in a premeditated act. Premeditation can happen within seconds.
As prosecutors cede the floor to Justin's defense team, they expect his defense to bring up Floyd's past relationship with Jane as a rationale for his actions that day. However, in a surprise move, they don't mention it either.
My client's instructions to me was that he was not responsible for the death of the victim. He requested that the court not charge the lesser included offenses.
Justin's decision. Over the objection of his own attorney, he wanted all or nothing.
The defense's argument was that the altercation between Floyd and Justin was just a fist fight, and that after he drove off, that Floyd went on to do another drug deal, and that's where he was stabbed.
It was the defense's theory that there was sufficient passage of time from the time that the decedent left the block in dealing with Justin that he could have stopped someplace else along the line, tried either to make another deal, or perhaps he was being ripped off by somebody, and that resulted in his death and the stabbing, not the actions of my client.
But it still remains to be seen how Justin's defense team intends to support this allegation in light of the previous statement of his girlfriend, Jane Compton. On September 12th, prosecutors called their star witness to the stand to testify.
Jane had a surprise for the prosecutor when she took the stand. Her testimony changed.
What she did was, we called it, she took a dive. She stated that this information she gave in the beginning was a lie, and that she never said he had a knife or a pointy object in his hand.
It was horrible. She don't have a heart.
She goes on to explain the usual. The police, they coerced me. They threatened to take my 6-year-old child.
She probably started having second thoughts and feeling bad and didn't want to see her baby's father go away for that amount of time. It's not uncommon for witnesses to have second thoughts, especially if you think you love that person that you're now sending away to jail and you're the only witness that's doing it.
This was extremely stressful for Floyd's family because Jane's new testimony could ruin their chances of getting justice for their loved one.
It's a gut-wrenching turn of events, but maybe not all is lost.
Jane Compton's original statement to police had been recorded, and prosecutors had that evidence in their possession.
I played the video statement to the jury where they saw her entire first statement. They could tell that she was not being coerced. There were no signs of her being under duress.
Despite Jane's attempt to throw the case, the prosecution argues the evidence against Justin is overwhelming.
The phones set up a very tight timeline, and the surveillance video captures Floyd's Range Rover as he was trying to drive himself to the hospital. There was no time for him to go anywhere else and even meet with anyone else, much less get in an argument that led to him being stabbed somewhere else.
Those cameras and what telephone records just don't lie.
What Justin Hazel did that day showed that he is a violent individual. He felt disrespected just by the fact that his girlfriend was in a car with another man, and he acted on it quickly and violently. His temperament shows that he is a murderer.
On September 14th, the jury returns with a verdict.
I was very happy when the words guilty were said because that's what he was. And that's what needed to happen.
Justin Hazel was sentenced to 35 years in prison.
It's just a satisfaction that I cannot explain, to put away someone who took an innocent person's life for no reason other than an innocent exchange of a pair of sneakers.
It wasn't even that Floyd was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was really the case of someone, in this case, Justin Hazel, who just lost his temper. It was a complete misunderstanding, and it could have definitely been avoided.
But in love, as in life, every decision we make has consequences. And for those that most acutely feel the void of Floyd McLean's death, not a day goes by that they don't think of him.
We were together young, so he was like, even though he do whatever he's doing, he's like my friend, my everything. The loss of him, I think my whole life was gone.
Sometimes when I look at the stairs, I think of him going up them. When I look at the backyard, I think of like the water gun fights we used to have or the snowball fights I used to have with my dad. It's crazy to think that he's not there anymore.
Booking.com has all kinds of stays for those who love family resorts and for those who do not. There we go. Find exactly what you're booking for. Booking.com, booking.yeah.
A family's worst nightmare becomes a reality when a loving husband and father is attacked in the dead of the night.
It tore us up. It broke us down.
It was just utter disbelief.
As the investigation heats up, secrets swirl about multiple affairs.
She was a much older woman.
When he was cornered, he said, yes, we did have sex. Yes, we are involved.
But could a twisted bond between these May-December lovers enable a killer to get away scot-free?
It all kind of came to a head.
He completely denied setting the Pontiac Grand Dam on fire.
This will come back to haunt you.
There's scandalous, and then there's this case, and you just can't make stuff like this up.
June 27, 2003. It's early morning in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, a town located less than an hour's drive from Philadelphia.
It's an old steel town, which, like a lot of Pennsylvania steel towns, has come on some hard times.
Though this blue-collar community has its fair share of crime, no one could anticipate the call 911 dispatchers would receive at 5:30 that morning.
911, what's your emergency?
Oh my God, somebody just broke into my house.
The caller is 30-year-old Sharmella Morris.
Sharmella said 2 people had just broken into the home that she shared with her 30-year-old husband, Demario, and their 2 young daughters.
They bound her hands, they bound her feet.
Are the intruders still in the house?
Oh, no, but my husband, he's hurt.
Her husband had been stabbed multiple times. He's bleeding profusely. She tries to locate a pulse, but he's non-responsive.
The operator immediately dispatches first responders to the scene.
First responders converge at the Morris home on South Chester Avenue.
Police, open up!
Sharmella had managed to break free from the ties around her feet, but her hands were still tied.
Please hurry, my husband, he's been stabbed.
Are you the only one in the house?
As police climb the stairs, Sharmella informs them her 2 young children are in the house as well.
Her 2 daughters were in the room next door. They were sound asleep.
One down the bed. Got it.
In the master bedroom, first responders encounter a horrific scene.
They found Demario's body lying on this bed. He was face down, covered in a pool of blood.
There's no pulse. Looks like he's gone.
Tragically, they were too late to do anything. Her husband was already dead.
Soon, news of the apparent murder on South Chester Avenue will engulf the town of Coatesville like a violent storm. And as the tempest intensifies, it will wreak havoc on everything and everyone in its path.
I cried like a baby. I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I haven't been the same since.
Born in 1970, Demario Morris grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he rose to local fame as a street artist who tagged under the pseudonym Blaze.
That boy had graffiti all down the busway. He was a fantastic artist. I mean, this boy could draw. You know how people have a gift? His gift was art.
Though the city served as Demario's canvas, he set his sights on being more than just a graffiti artist.
I think he saw that where he lived in Pittsburgh was a dead end, and he joined the Navy as a way of getting out of Pittsburgh.
When 20-year-old Demario came home on leave one weekend in 1990, he wasn't looking for love. But nevertheless, he found it.
Look like you got a lot of bass over here.
The young woman was 18-year-old Sharmella Terry.
Demario.
Nice to meet you.
We was in the service during this time when they met.
As Sharmella and Demario talked that day, they both saw something they liked.
He was a person who liked to crack jokes and laugh all day.
He was more outgoing than she was. Sharmella was a quiet person.
Whenever Demario was granted leave, he made a beeline for Pittsburgh and to Sharmella.
This boy was coming down my house all the time.
What are you doing here?
Though the couple cherished their time together, they were always left wanting more.
I'm only in town for a few days, and I want to spend them all with you.
They loved each other hard.
So it came as no surprise to friends and family that when Demario left the Navy less than a year later, he moved back home to be with Sharmella. Not long after that, the young lovebirds received an unexpected but welcome surprise.
She got pregnant, she had the baby. They was happy, and I was happy too.
So how's baby girl?
She's doing good, and I finally got her to sleep.
Following the birth of their daughter in 1991, the couple made the move to Coatesville and finally tied the knot. They vowed to build the best life possible for their growing family.
Demario worked at a manufacturing plant that made industrial insulation. He was a valuable and well-regarded employee by all accounts.
He was a quick learner. But most importantly, he got along with everybody.
Sharmella was a counselor at the Pennsylvania Clinical School, which is a facility for juvenile sex offenders.
She just always talked about being around kids,
trying to set them with positive attitude.
By 1997, Sharmella and DeMario now had 2 beautiful daughters, 2 good-paying jobs, and a lovely home. The couple showered their daughters with love and affection.
They had everything under the sun you could ask for. Beautiful rooms. They dressed nice. They went to nice schools.
Then in late 2002, DeMario's boss presented him with the chance of a lifetime.
Why don't you girls go ahead and wash it for me?
He had been offered a promotion and an opportunity to move to Houston, Texas.
He was going to be supervising this new plant.
I have one question. Are you excited about this move?
I'm so excited. I can't wait.
She wanted to try to better her life and her husband's life. She was excited to start a new journey.
But just days before the family was set to move, the couple was attacked in their own home, and DeMario's life taken in horrific fashion.
To be victims of a home invasion, bound, and then DeMario murdered in his vicious way, it was just unbelievable.
DeMario's the first person I've ever known that had been murdered. We were very saddened by the situation that left his daughters without a father and a mother in shock. It's a tragedy.
But when the facts of the case begin to emerge, not even Sharmella will be able to protect her poor girls from the terrible truth.
It's just something that has torn my whole family apart.
After 12 blissful years of marriage, Pennsylvania natives Sharmella and DeMario Blaze Morris were looking forward to beginning a new chapter of their lives in Houston, Texas.
He received a promotion.
They were moving up like the Jeffersons.
But just days before their big move, tragedy strikes the Morris family.
On June 27, 2003, Sharmella makes a call to 911. And she lets them know, my husband has been stabbed, he's bloodied, someone has broken into our home.
After paramedics examined Sharmella for signs of serious injury, detectives ask her to recount the night's events.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Sharmella said that she'd been punched in the back of the head by the perpetrators.
Ma'am, we are going to find out who did this to you and your husband.
But it's Sharmella's emotional suffering that seems to be taking the biggest toll.
She called me, she said, Mom, all these detectives are at the house. Blaze is dead. I didn't know what to say. I love Blaze like he was my own. We all did, my whole family did. It tore us up. It broke us down.
Fighting back tears, Sharmella pleads with detectives to do whatever it takes to find the men who killed her husband.
First, we're gonna need a little bit of help from you, okay?
Anything.
If you don't care, just walk us through what happened tonight.
She said she was coming out of the bedroom at 3:30 in the morning when masked men confronted her.
Oh my God!
The guy grabbed Sharmella by the hair and led her into the bedroom. They had latex gloves on. One had a hockey mask.
She says that one of the perpetrators had a gun. The second perpetrator had a knife.
Get out. Give us what we want. Nobody gets hurt.
He was asking for money.
Where's the money? I don't have any money.
You got something.
She said she had some jewelry that he could have.
Where's the jewelry? Is this money?
That's when Sharmella says DeMario finally woke up.
She described DeMario rising out of bed.
Sharmella!
She told police that he resisted in an attempt to perhaps fight the intruders.
Sharmella! Honey! No!
And he was stabbed.
Shut up! I told you this would happen. Be quiet. Shut up.
Please, please, please. Please don't hurt me. I have two
children. Shut up. Get the cord and tie her up.
All of this lasted about 15 minutes.
She waited, and when she felt that they were gone, she picked up the phone to call 911.
I need help. Someone just broke into my house.
It appeared her 6 and 12-year-old daughters had slept through the entire ordeal and were okay. DeMario's injuries were fatal.
Did you notice anything missing in the house? Was anything taken?
Just some jewelry and the keys to the Grand Am.
She said the keys were near the door, and the two intruders must have taken the keys on their way out of the house.
Tell you what, why don't you go ahead and hang tight? We're gonna take a look around, okay?
We'll be right back.
With the car gone, it certainly looks like a robbery, which really isn't too surprising given the recent spike in violent crime in the area.
But even though the Morris' Grand Am appears to have been stolen, it seems the intruders left plenty of other valuables behind.
There was a television, a VCR. There was a video gaming system and a computer. If this were indeed a robbery, why wouldn't the suspects have run off with those?
The drawers to Sharmella's jewelry box had been pulled open, but there was still jewelry inside. Why had the burglars taken some of the jewelry, but not all of it?
Detectives float one possible theory.
After the murder, the intruders felt the need to flee the scene as quickly as possible. They escaped by stealing the couple's car.
Police put an APB out on the vehicle, hoping it might lead them to whoever did this.
With the medical examiner now on the scene,
So what do we got, Doc?
investigators join him for a post-mortem on the victim.
They found defensive wounds on his hands. It appears that DeMario woke up, he tried to fight off the perpetrator.
That seemed to corroborate what Sharmella had already said happened.
But something else about the murder surprises detectives.
You got 10, maybe 12 stab wounds here.
From my experience, when you stab someone that many times, it's anger.
In cases where the violence is this intense, the first person police look at is the spouse.
So, even though Sharmella seems to be telling the truth, investigators wonder if she's being completely honest with them.
But now that Sharmella's little girls have woken up, questioning Sharmella will have to wait.
She had to break the horrible news about DeMario to her children.
It's just something you don't even want to talk about. Something you just want to throw under the rug.
In the morning hours of June 27, 2003, police in Coatesville, Pennsylvania are doing everything in their power to untangle the mystery of DeMario Morris's murder. According to DeMario's wife, Sharmella, the couple had been the victims of a violent home invasion gone wrong. But the brutality of DeMario's murder and the plethora of valuables the thieves left behind have police questioning her account.
It's Investigation 101 to start with a spouse and work out from there. That's especially true when the victim has been stabbed multiple times. But on the other hand, Sharmella and DeMario's car is indeed missing, so maybe there is some element of truth to her story.
With Sharmella's children now awake, detectives agree to meet with her later at the station.
She said her top priority was to get the children settled before meeting with police.
News of DeMario's murder spreads through the town of Coatesville like wildfire. No one is more taken aback than his colleagues at work.
The reaction in our plant was just utter disbelief.
It was devastating because DeMario was the guy that everyone really warmed up to, and it was just heartbreaking.
That afternoon, DeMario's co-worker, Dean Barber, approaches police with what he believes is a potential lead.
I may have some information about DeMario and Sharmella's case.
Dean describes DeMario as an outgoing man and one always eager to talk about the things he loved most.
He was constantly talking about his kids and how great they were.
He was one of those people that you just look at and think, this guy's doing life the right way. He's having fun, he's working hard, doing all the right things, he's raising two wonderful kids.
But Dean says as much as DeMario liked to brag about his two daughters, there was one subject on which he was strangely silent: his wife, Sharmella.
For a guy that liked to talk about people, he didn't really say much about her.
One day at work, we started talking, and he seemed really down.
According to Dean, about a year ago, DeMario began to open up to him.
Hey, man, what's up? Have a good weekend?
It was all right.
You seem a little down. What's up?
Marriage stuff, you know?
He told stories money was disappearing. He said she's going away for full weekends. She would take the car in the middle of the night and suddenly turn up at 4 in the morning.
So what do you think it means?
What you think it means?
He knew that she was having an affair.
Dean says that despite evidence Sharmella was cheating, DeMario stuck it out.
She's not doing the right things as far as living a lifestyle that's conducive to being a mother of 2 children. He's doing all the right things. The kids were going to school, and, he would get them up, get them on the bus.
DeMario tried to look past it because they both loved their children.
It was tough for him. That's no way to live.
Everything seemed okay for a little while. They got this job promotion to go to Houston.
According to Dean, he believed that when DeMario got the job offer in Houston, he and Sharmella would go their separate ways. But that wasn't the case.
She said, I'm all in. I want to move down to Houston.
Dean Barber's revelation that Sharmella had been cheating on DeMario made police even more eager to interview her.
Within the hour, detectives sit down with Sharmella.
We need to know if there were any problems that you and your husband were having.
I mean, like all couples, our marriage wasn't perfect.
She admitted, hey, you know, my marriage with DeMario has not been the best. We've had our ups and downs.
So you're saying that you were being faithful to him?
I would never cheat on my husband.
You're saying nothing ever happened with anyone, right?
But after some pressure from detectives, Sharmella finally admits that she had stepped outside of her marriage after the spark with DeMario had burned out.
That little fairy tale thing was gone. And when you don't know what to do about it, women and men sometimes seek the attention elsewhere.
Sharmella admits to having an affair with two men, Derek Batson and Maurice Hicksmith.
Did your husband know about these men?
Yes.
How did he feel about this?
I mean, he was upset, but I told him that they were just flings. They didn't mean anything.
Suppose that one of these men wanted to kill your husband so that they could have you for themselves.
No.
Or maybe you decided
mean,
to kill him so that you could run off with one of them.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I loved him. We just grew apart.
Before detectives can push any further, they're pulled out of the interview.
I'll be right back.
The case just kept getting more complicated.
She approached him and said, hey, you know, I've been having dreams about you.
There's always more to the story.
In her interview with Pennsylvania police on June 27, 2003, DeMario Morris's widow, Sharmella, has admitted to a pair of extramarital affairs.
She admitted to cheating on DeMario, but she swore that neither she nor her two lovers had anything to do with his death.
Still, police aren't entirely convinced. This could have easily been a love triangle gone wrong.
But as detectives prepare to turn up the heat on Sharmella, they receive a phone call from the Philadelphia Police Department.
Detective Miller.
They had found the car on fire in Pennypack Park.
Philadelphia.
After putting out the fire, police checked the license plate on the vehicle, ran it through a database, and realized it had been reported missing. And it was tied to a murder investigation in Coatesville.
The car belonged to DeMario and Sharmella Morris.
Okay. All right, thanks. So it looks like they've located your car outside of Philadelphia. What would it be doing there?
I don't know. I don't know anybody in Philadelphia. My family, they're from Pittsburgh.
Sharmella's shock appears genuine. Investigators can't help but wonder if her initial story of a home invasion may in fact be true.
Perhaps the perpetrators did take the car to Pennypack Park, set it on fire as a way to destroy the evidence.
But without any other leads, the discovery of the vehicle raises more questions than answers.
Sharmella could be conspiring with an accomplice, and maybe that individual killed DeMario and then fled to Philly to burn the car and destroy the evidence.
With no concrete evidence of Sharmella's involvement in the murder, police have no choice but to release her. Later that night, detectives received the analysis results for the Morrises' charred Pontiac Grand Am.
Philly PD lab results.
But unfortunately, whoever stole it knew precisely how to cover their tracks.
No suitable DNA matches found.
There were no fingerprints, no blood evidence, and no DNA.
It's a whole lot of nothing is what that is.
With the investigation losing momentum, the next morning, detectives tracked down Sharmella's two lovers, Derek Batson and Maurice Hicksmith.
When police located Derek and Maurice, both acknowledged their affairs, but they denied being jealous of DeMario and having anything to do with his death.
Both men said they weren't anywhere near Sharmella's home on the night of the murder, nor were they in Philadelphia prior to the discovery of the burned-out car.
But if neither Derek Batson nor Maurice Hicksmith is responsible for the stolen vehicle, then who is?
Police had no suspect in it at all.
But they figure if Sharmella is involved, her cell correspondence might lead them to the arsonist.
Looks like I have Sharmella's phone calls. Let's see who she's been talking to.
That afternoon, police subpoena Sharmella's phone records. In doing so, they unearth a potential lead.
And numbers she keeps calling in Philadelphia.
Prior to Sharmella's interview with the police, she had been on the phone back and forth with someone named Ryan Mathis.
Ryan Mathis is only 19 years old, but he's already pretty well known to police. He has a record involving sexual assault and drugs.
Ryan Mathis lived in the vicinity of where the Morris' stolen vehicle was discovered.
By the next afternoon, detectives have Ryan at the station for questioning. They begin by asking him if he knew the victim, DeMario Morris.
I knew his wife. I don't really know him too much, but I met his wife about 2 years ago.
He talks about how they met at the Pennsylvania Clinical School, where Sharmella was a counselor, which is a facility for juvenile sex offenders. Ryan Mathis had been sentenced there for a 14-month stay.
Ryan, were you having sex with Sharmella?
Hi, Ryan.
How you doing, Miss Morris?
Though Ryan explains the relationship with Sharmella began as that of patient and counselor, one day in 2001, it took an unexpected turn.
Can I talk to you for a second?
Okay.
She approached Ryan and said, hey, you know, I've been having dreams about you.
What kind of dreams?
The naughty kind.
Really?
Yes, really.
From there, they started an affair.
According to Ryan, once a month he was given a weekend visitation pass to see his mother. Instead, he chose to meet up with Sharmella, where they acted out her wildest fantasies.
He said he and Sharmella had sex 5 times a week. Sometimes it was at his house, sometimes it was at her house. They went to various hotels.
Though Ryan doesn't deny their physical attraction, he also admits there's a more transactional side to the relationship.
She would buy me CDs, buy me video games, that kind of thing.
He saw Sharmella Morris as someone that he could essentially mooch off. Sharmella would buy him clothes, she'd buy him new shoes, she'd help take care of his cell phone.
Ryan says while they tried to keep their affair a secret, by the end of 2001, school administrators had begun asking questions about the special treatment Sharmella was giving Ryan.
He was confronted as to the new items that he had.
Ryan describes how disciplinary actions were imposed on both he and Sharmella in an attempt to end their inappropriate behavior.
They suspended some of his privileges, and then they moved her to another unit.
While the school frowned upon the special treatment that Sharmella was showing Ryan, with no clear-cut evidence that an affair had occurred, they still took steps to limit the interaction between them.
But Ryan says that when his stint at Pennsylvania Clinical School came to an end in July of 2002, he and Sharmella continued their romance.
Did her husband know about you having an affair?
Yeah, he did.
One time, the husband confronted him.
Open up! Open up! Let's cut to the chase, boy. I know you've been sleeping with my wife.
The husband just let it go at that. There was no retribution.
It's a salacious story for sure. But if Ryan Mathis is telling the truth, then Sharmella Morris is withholding information from police.
Did you help Sharmella murder her husband?
No, I wouldn't murder anyone.
Well, you had lots of motives. She's giving you things, you're having sex with her. You have plenty of reason to have him dead.
DeMario was threatening to take Sharmella and his family to Houston, which would have ended Sharmella's relationship with Ryan.
You've got the best reason to. Your sugar mama's cutting you off.
Look, it was all physical. It wasn't like we were exclusive or anything. She had other guys, I had other girls.
Ryan insists he was nowhere near Sharmella and DeMario's house on the night of the murder.
Ryan tells them that Sharmella was with him at his house in Philadelphia, where they had sex, but she left on her own around midnight. He stayed in Philadelphia and had another one of his girlfriends come over.
So you're telling us that you had nothing to do with his murder?
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
So just hang on.
Again, with no hard evidence linking Ryan to the crime, detectives are forced to let him go. No sooner has Ryan Mathis left the station than investigators call Sharmella back for another round of questioning.
They brought her back and confronted her with her lies.
We're wondering why you didn't tell us about your relationship with Ryan Mathis.
Well,
She begrudgingly acknowledged the affair was going on and tried to explain that she hadn't mentioned it because she thought it would make her look guilty.
it doesn't look good when you're with your lover on the night that your husband is killed.
Lying looks a lot worse.
You're right. And now I'm going to start telling the truth.
And just as Ryan had told police hours earlier, Sharmella says she was with her young lover until shortly after midnight on June 27th.
She left him there to travel back to her home to Coatesville.
As for what occurred afterwards, Sharmella remains firm that intruders murdered her husband.
Police are certain that Sharmella is involved in her husband's death and that Ryan Mathis assisted in the murder. But with no physical evidence linking either of them to the crime, they can't prove it. And it's becoming clear Sharmella knows this.
But as police apply pressure, will both Ryan and Sharmella hold up? Because if one of them cracks, all bets are off.
All this is getting ready to come to a screeching halt. Everything's gonna be over.
48 hours into the murder investigation of DeMario Morris, detectives in Coatesville, Pennsylvania have exposed a trio of extramarital affairs involving his wife, Sharmella. None more shocking than the one she was having with 19-year-old Ryan Mathis.
Sharmella Morris and her young lover, Ryan Mathis, were both adamant they had nothing to do with DeMario's death. But police knew the Morris family was getting ready to move to Houston. Could this have been the trigger that caused one or more of them to act?
Of course, police are suspicious of Sharmella and Ryan's stories, but at this point, it's all still speculation.
But that all changes when police receive a return visit from Ryan Mathis and his mother.
Detectives, my son has something that he needs to tell you all.
Okay, Ryan, tell us something.
After the first interview, his mother has found out that he misled police.
Now you need to tell them the truth. Do it.
She's upset and tells her son he has to correct the record.
Okay, I'll admit I wasn't 100% honest with you all.
You kind of figured that.
Ryan Mathis admits to accompanying Sharmella back to her home in the early morning hours of June 27th.
We went back to Sharmella's house around about 2 o'clock.
So then what happened?
Okay, so hang tight. I'm gonna go in, take a shower.
Sharmella tells Ryan, I'll be back in an hour.
This was pretty typical of their relationship.
It seemed like forever I was in that car.
He would come to Sharmella's house and hang around until the husband went to work.
And then she came out. I was a little upset, so I jumped out of the car.
Ryan says at around 4 a.m., Sharmella came back wearing only a nightgown. But it's what she said next that floored him.
Yo, what's taking so long? I've been out here for about an hour. What's going on?
I killed him.
Ryan claims at that point he began to panic.
Why would you bring me into something like this?
I need you to calm down.
No, I need to get out of here. That's what I need to do. I need to go.
She said, take the car and burn it. This was a way for her story to sound more plausible. Burglars saw the car keys, and so they took the Grand Dam and set it on fire to perhaps destroy evidence that would have linked them back to the crime.
According to Ryan, he didn't question his older lover.
He's 19 years old. This woman is 30. She's been whining and dining him, giving him gifts. He did what she asked.
Detectives ask Ryan why Sharmella would want to get rid of her husband.
He said if we continued with the affair that he was gonna leave her. He was gonna take the kids and go to Texas where he got a job promotion.
She wanted to stay in Coatesville to raise her children and continue this relationship with Ryan Mathis.
But her husband had already told her if she continued their affair, he was going to keep the kids.
So she decided to kill her husband.
Though investigators press the suspect harder, Ryan refuses to budge.
Ryan denies any involvement with the actual murder of DeMario Morris.
It's a powerful story, but detectives have to wonder, is it true?
Ryan Mathis had lied to police during his first interview. He had lied about burning the car. He had lied about traveling with Sharmella from his house in Philly to Coatesville.
What would you say if we asked you to talk to her on the phone, and then we recorded that?
Ryan Mathis agrees to cooperate with investigators. and he agrees to have one of his phone conversations recorded with Sharmella.
Detectives listen in as Ryan Mathis calls Sharmella.
The phone is tapped, so it goes to a recording station where other officers are listening, and they record what's going on.
Hey, it's me.
Ryan? I thought I told you not to call me.
Look, I did what you told me to do.
Shut up, shut up, shut up.
She told him 3 times to shut up instead of listening to what he was talking about. Obviously, she knew what he was talking about.
There's nothing that's technically incriminating, but a few minutes into the call, she seems to slip up.
Don't worry. I didn't involve you. I'll talk to you later. Steps.
And then she ends the call with the word steps.
Steps. What does that mean?
Ryan told police steps is a code word for a secret meeting place.
Ryan makes plans to meet Sharmella at their secret rendezvous point. But instead, detectives intercept her.
Sharmella, put your purse down, stand up and face me, please.
Based on that phone call, police feel they have enough evidence to make an arrest.
You're under arrest.
Sharmella Morris was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit arson.
Despite cooperating with police, Ryan Mathis is also charged.
Ryan Mathis was charged with arson, criminal conspiracy, and hindering apprehension.
It isn't long before the arrest of these May-December lovers is front-page news in both Coatesville and Philadelphia. Friends and family of Sharmella and DeMario are blown away.
People close to them were torn as to whether or not they believe Sharmella could have really done something like this.
It was just so sad for the kids. They've already lost one parent, and now the other is being charged with murder.
My family was upset. Some of them believed that she did it.
It seemed pretty obvious to most of us of her guilt.
Can't see my child killing him like that. I just can't. I didn't raise her like that. It don't add up. This girl's married, she owns a home. She had nothing to gain, nothing. That boy had no job, no income. I think the boyfriend did it. He knew the day was leaving. His meal ticket was coming to a screeching halt.
But as the case moves to trial, Sharmella's teen lover appears poised to testify against her.
He would clear up for the jury things left unsaid in the wiretap phone call.
But little do prosecutors know, a troubling jailhouse correspondence could upend their entire case.
She pleads with Ryan not to let the DA get to him.
In Pennsylvania, 30-year-old Sharmella Morris stands accused of murdering her husband, DeMario. With little physical evidence tying Sharmella to the crime, prosecutors are pinning their case on the sworn confession of Sharmella's 19-year-old lover, Ryan Mathis, and are hopeful he will testify against her at trial.
Ryan was looking at a number of charges, and he was facing several years in prison. But his trump card was that he allegedly was the only person Sharmella had confessed to.
But as the case makes its way through court, Sharmella tries to persuade Ryan not to testify against her.
While Sharmella is in jail, she begins to write Ryan letters.
Sharmella pleads with Ryan not to let the DA get to him. She also writes what we mean to each other. Don't ever forget that.
So now the question becomes, will this teenager who allegedly committed arson at Sharmella's request be seduced again into doing her bidding?
DeMario's friends and family were worried about what Ryan might say or do at trial.
On February 14, 2005, Sharmella's murder trial gets underway.
DeMario's mother and his 2 sisters, they were right behind the prosecution.
But Sharmella's own mother can't bring herself to attend.
I couldn't stand going. I don't want to see her like that.
In their opening statements, prosecutors highlight Sharmella's tawdry relationship with Ryan Mathis, as well as the impending move that forced Sharmella to choose between her family and her teenage lover.
DeMario was moving on with his plans, and I guess she wanted things to stay the same.
She didn't want to lose the kids. But she wasn't giving up her boyfriend, Ryan, so she had to find a way to get rid of her husband so she can continue the life that she had.
Sharmella wanted to continue to have her cake and eat it too.
And so, prosecutors say, in the early morning hours of June 27, 2003, Sharmella put her murderous plan in motion.
Prosecutors believe she went to visit Ryan in Philadelphia. They had sex and then drove the 50 miles together back to Sharmella's home in 𝐄𝐏𝐒, Pennsylvania. Once they got there, he waited in the car.
Prosecutors assert that she then went inside and killed her husband of 12 years.
He was sleeping. She came up with a knife, stabbed him once. That woke him up. Then she stabbed a few more times.
She probably did it very quickly. An angry person can stab you numerous times without thinking twice about it because they're enraged. According to the autopsy, the victim was stabbed 12 times.
The single knife wounds weren't deep enough to kill somebody, except that one hit a nerve.
When that nerve was sliced open, it cut off blood flow to the heart, resulting in his death.
So it was kind of a 1 in a million shot that, that she succeeded.
She then came out, blood on her nightgown, to find Ryan waiting there.
She told Ryan he has to dispose of the couple's car, and then Sharmella was disposing of the murder weapon and coming up with an alibi.
Finally, after her tracks had been covered and she'd concocted her cover story, around 5:30 that morning, she called 911.
Oh my God, somebody just broke into my house.
To cement their theory, prosecutors call their star witness Ryan Mathis to the stand.
This was it, the moment of truth. Would he stand by Sharmella's side, or would he throw her under the bus?
Even with cases that you think were open and shut, there's always that fear in the back of family members' minds. Are they going to get away with this?
It turns out DeMario's loved ones have nothing to fear.
As he had done previously, Ryan recounted the night of the murder and Sharmella's confession in all of its gory details.
But on cross-examination, Sharmella's defense team moves to undermine the state's star witness's credibility, as well as his potential motivation for agreeing to cooperate with authorities.
In exchange for his testimony against Sharmella, Ryan pled guilty to arson and related charges. He was sentenced to 3 to 6 years in prison, plus 4 years of probation.
That's a far cry from a life sentence for murder, which according to the defense gives Ryan ample reason to lie on the witness stand. Essentially, he would be trying to save his own skin.
They painted him as a liar. He had lied to police during his first interview. He had lied about burning the car. He had lied about traveling with Sharmella from his house in Philly to 𝐄𝐏𝐒.
The defense even raises the possibility that Ryan could be the real killer.
If Sharmella moved to Houston, that was the end of their relationship.
His lavish gifts and his sex was going to end.
On February 17th, both sides rest their case.
DeMario's mother was hopeful that, her son didn't die in vain for all of this, that they would convict Sharmella.
2 hours later, the jury returns with their verdict.
The jury convicted Sharmella Morris on first-degree murder and the killing of her husband, DeMario Morris. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, first-degree murder convictions automatically come with a life sentence.
There was never any doubt, at least not in my mind, she'll be convicted and she'll have a life sentence. And that's exactly what happened.
As for Sharmella's family, their reaction to the verdict is a mix of shock, sadness, and shame.
I was heartbroken. I was humiliated. I was all that.
July 7th, 2013, College Park, Georgia. For resident Rachel McCall, Sundays usually mean one thing: movie night with her good friend and local police officer, 34-year-old Crystal Parker. But when Crystal doesn't show up by 7:30, Rachel begins to worry.
Rachel hadn't heard from Crystal, so she went to Crystal's home.
Chris, are you in there?
She called her name, there was no answer, and she found the door unlocked.
Chris, you home?
She went inside and found the back door open.
Chris, are you home?
With each step Rachel takes, her concern grows. As she climbs the stairs, that concern turns to fear.
Crystal?
You up here?
She made the gruesome discovery upstairs in Crystal's bedroom.
She was frightened. She quickly got out of that house and called 911.
Minutes later, first responders arrive at the scene.
What's going on?
This is my friend Crystal's house. She's in her bedroom. I think she's dead.
Stand over here, let's go in and check everything out, okay?
What Fulton County law enforcement doesn't realize is that this is the home of a fellow officer.
Police department. Great.
Inside, they find the body of East Point, Georgia police officer Crystal Parker.
Crystal actually worked in East Point, but she lived in College Park.
She was a training officer, and she had a gunshot wound to the back of her head. It was obviously a priority case. Because it was a fellow officer, it took a toll on each of us working the case.
But as police grapple with the loss of one of their own, questions about Crystal's personal life will slowly emerge. Questions of love, fidelity, conspiracy, and murder.
The only thing I need to say is, I ain't got nothing to do with this. I ain't know this bitch is crazy.
Born in 1978, Crystal Parker grew up in Central Florida, along with her twin brother Chris and their 2 siblings.
So around the age of 3 or 4, my mom and dad got divorced.
After the divorce, Crystal's mom moved to Atlanta.
Life was a little rough growing up, you know. My dad, single parent, raising 4 kids by herself. But, I mean, we all made it through it. Turned out pretty good.
Crystal was no exception. Outgoing, smart, and physically gifted, Crystal was a standout athlete in high school.
She played basketball, softball, ran cross-country track, and did the pole ball event.
Shortly after high school graduation, Crystal shared a revelation with friends and family.
She came out officially around September of '97.
With a new outlook on life, Crystal had big dreams for a bright future.
Around 2004, she decided to join the police academy.
Crystal was a very hard worker. She wanted to reach out to the community and let the community know, you know, hey, I'm a police officer. I'm here if you need me.
Once she graduated from the police academy, she was hired on by the East Point Police Department. And from there, she settled in the Atlanta area.
She loved East Point and she wanted to make it a better place.
As her career was taking off in the East Point suburbs, Crystal also began to thrive in Atlanta's vibrant LGBT community.
When it comes to the Atlanta LGBT community, it is awesome.
The LGBT community here in Atlanta is one of the largest in the country.
One night in 2007, Crystal spied a pretty young woman on the other side of the room. Her name was Danielle Dixon.
You see that girl over there?
I see. She said when she looked at her, she told her friend, that's mine. She's gonna be my girlfriend. She walked over and introduced herself.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm Crystal.
Danielle.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
They spent the rest of the evening just talking to each other.
I've been on the force for about 4.5 years.
Wow.
I just really love helping people.
That's amazing. It means you have a good heart.
4 years younger than Crystal, Danielle was raised in Atlanta by a single mom.
When Danielle was younger, she was very overweight. But when she got in high school, she lost a lot of the weight.
She had gone through a very big weight loss, and people were paying attention to her because she did have an hourglass shape.
By the time she met Crystal, Danielle had become this beautiful, vivacious woman.
The connection between Crystal and Danielle was immediate.
Danielle did give you that kind of damsel in distress kind of feel that you could be, you know, the alpha and that you were coming in to save.
Their interaction with each other was very romantical, lovey-dovey, you know, public affection, that type of thing.
Within a matter of just a few weeks, Crystal invited Danielle to move in with her.
This relationship was flourishing to the point where even though same-sex marriage was illegal in Georgia, Danielle and Crystal decided to participate in a civil union here in Atlanta.
Their civil union was done at Atlanta Pride. I know that the concept of taking on the Parker name was a big deal for Danielle.
By 2012, life never looked better for these young lovers, both personally and professionally.
Crystal was slated to get a promotion to sergeant.
Danielle was in school to be a nurse.
They started establishing that connection of a married couple.
Which is why now, less than a year later, Crystal's brutal death seems all the more tragic.
We were all wondering who could do this to this wonderful person.
As investigators begin combing through the crime scene, they will soon realize there are no easy answers to that question.
If somebody can kill a police officer in her home, they're concerned about who's next. There's a killer on the loose.
After 6 loving years, Georgia couple Crystal and Danielle Parker had carved out an idyllic life together. But in the evening hours of July 7th, 2013, Crystal was found shot to death inside her and Danielle's College Park home by longtime friend Rachel McCall.
Rachel McCall was utterly shocked. She had no idea what had happened to her.
As investigators arrived to process the scene, word of Crystal's murder spreads to her family and fellow officers.
Around 8 o'clock that night, my brother Joey calls me. He's like, hey, Crystal's dead. I'm like, what the hell, what happened? I broke down and cried.
We didn't know who did it, why they would do it, so it was very shocking.
The entire vibe in the police department was extremely sad because Crystal was such a beloved officer in that department.
The Fulton County PD's homicide unit immediately begins looking for Crystal's wife, Danielle Parker.
They had to wonder where Danielle was. They were very concerned.
Crystal was face down, and she had a bullet in the back of her head.
Detectives searched the room but didn't find a shell casing, which suggests that the murder weapon was either a revolver or the suspect took the casing with them. On the chair at the foot of the bed, detectives find a police officer's duty gun belt, which contains what appears to be Crystal's service weapon.
Glock 22. Looks like it's loaded. Maybe it's the murder weapon. Maybe let's bag it and get into the lab.
With the potential murder weapon being processed, detectives turn their attention to Crystal's body.
Crystal is found on July 7th, but it is apparent from her decomposition that she'd likely been there for a while, maybe a couple of days.
Detective, we just heard back from her agency.
When investigators contact Crystal's colleagues at the East Point Police Department, they learn her last work shift was the night of July 3rd.
She left her job at East Point around 12 o'clock midnight.
The next day, Crystal was due in for her normal shift at the police department, but she never showed up.
It was not like Crystal, who was Officer of the year prior.
Given her work schedule and state of decomposition, police theorized that she was killed late night or early morning, sometime between 12:30 a.m. July 4th and 8 a.m. the morning of July 6th.
As Crystal's body is transported to the coroner's office, detectives begin contemplating potential motives. One possibility centers on the neighborhood Crystal and Danielle call home.
The area of College Park, South Fulton County, is still Metro Atlanta. And any metro area is going to have higher crime.
This area has been rife with burglaries and break-ins and home invasions.
And I'm thinking, my goodness, somebody probably followed her in the house and tried to rob or burglarize her.
But the fact that Crystal is one of the area's most decorated police officers leads investigators to another theory.
You're arresting a lot of people, so there was some thought that maybe somebody was retaliating against Crystal. Somebody she had arrested came into her home, shot and killed her as retribution.
Adding credence to this theory is the fact that Crystal's wife, Danielle Parker, is still nowhere to be found.
Danielle's whereabouts were unknown, so people were concerned that maybe she had been a victim of crime as well.
Investigators canvassed the area, looking for anyone who might have seen anything unusual. None of Crystal's neighbors recall seeing anything out of the ordinary. That is, until detectives speak with 40-year-old Carl Thomas.
Yes, sir, can I help you?
We're just out doing some investigating around the neighborhood. Just wanted to know if you've seen anything suspicious lately.
Well, actually, a couple of days ago, There was a strange car that I'd never seen in the neighborhood before.
Where was it parked at?
Right over there in front of the police officer's house.
This neighbor says that a black female that he didn't recognize was behind the wheel of the suspicious car.
He said someone sitting inside. What was she doing?
Well, actually, she was just sitting there. I watched her for a little while.
The neighbor says that at one point, the woman turned around and appeared to notice him.
She must have seen me looking at her because all of a sudden she got this real nervous look on her face. She started the car up and she's like took off really fast.
He made a point to record the plate number of the vehicle and was able to give that information to investigators.
Investigators can't believe their good fortune. But will this license plate number lead them to their killer or simply down a blind alley?
This was a bizarre case. Very bizarre. A lot of twists and turns here.
Nothing about this case was ordinary. Soon, another name would emerge in this investigation that would take it in a whole other direction.
Law enforcement in College Park, Georgia, is investigating the brutal homicide of fellow police officer Crystal Parker. Just 2 hours into the investigation, Fulton County detectives already have multiple theories to consider.
College Park did have a reputation of being very high-level crime.
But Crystal may also have been targeted because of her standout work as a police officer.
Could this be somebody that she had possibly arrested, who came to her home and murdered her as retribution?
After canvassing the neighborhood, detectives have unearthed a witness. 40-year-old Carl Thomas claims to have seen an unidentified African-American woman staking out Crystal's house around the time police believe she was murdered.
Thank you so much for your time. If you come across anything else, please give us a call.
Detectives run the plate and they figure out that the car belongs to a woman named Karen Andrews.
Does Karen Andrews know Crystal Parker? Are they friends? Are they enemies? What is the relationship?
After running a background check, detectives discover that Karen Andrews lives less than a mile from Crystal and Danielle.
They knew they had to speak with her immediately.
Excuse us. Hey, good evening, ma'am.
How you doing?
You mind if we ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Are you Karen Andrews?
Yes, I am.
She tells him she does own a four-door sedan that generally matches the description provided by Carl Thomas. Then they started asking her about Crystal.
You know Crystal Parker?
No.
You sure?
Yeah, I'd never seen her before. I don't know who that is.
Were you parked in front of her house on the 4th?
Karen provided a simple explanation. She was there waiting to pick up her niece, who was getting off of the bus.
I didn't want her to be coming home by herself. I didn't exactly know whose house I was in front of.
The bus stop happened to be near Crystal's home.
And that guy, he was really strange, so I did speed off. He kept staring at me, looking at me weird.
After the detectives question Karen, they're able to confirm her story.
She was quickly eliminated from any suspicion of foul play.
If you hear any information about her or what happened or anything, please give us a call.
Okay, yes, I will.
You have a good evening.
All right, you too.
With a once promising lead gone by the wayside, detectives shift their focus to finding Crystal's wife, Danielle.
They hadn't been able to track her down, but luckily, some of Crystal and Danielle's friends were able to make contact with her via social media.
I reached out to her through Facebook Messenger. She was very distraught. She was just so heartbroken.
Detectives are relieved Danielle is alive, but they need to speak to her. The next morning, they bring Danielle in for questioning.
Danielle was in shock. She couldn't believe that such a horrible tragedy had happened to the woman that she loved.
It just feels like your life. She was really gone. I keep looking, every time my phone rings, I'm looking at like, her number's gonna pop up.
Detectives ask Danielle to describe her and Crystal's relationship. Danielle says that despite outward appearances, lately the couple had been having trouble.
What are you doing? What does it look like? Danielle, have you been out of the house today?
Briefly.
Have you looked for a job? What's going on with school? Have you been to school all week?
It's spring break. You messed my game up.
Danielle told investigators that after 6 years of her being with Crystal, their relationship had grown strained.
We've just been other than we was both like, we were never gonna part, like, ever out of 6 years. So it was let's just take a break, and then, you do that, and we'll still talk, we'll still see each other.
Danielle tells detectives that just a few weeks earlier, she moved out of her house with Crystal and in with her mother. But Danielle and Crystal had a hard time staying away from one another.
Danielle tells detectives that even though they were on this break, that she would spend the night a few nights a week.
When was the last time you saw Crystal?
Last time I saw her was last Wednesday. Not this past Wednesday.
Okay.
The week before.
So the last Thursday morning you saw her?
Yes.
June 27th?
Yes.
Danielle also provides detectives with what could be a vital tip.
A couple weeks prior to Crystal's murder, someone broke into her home. This was after Danielle moved out of their house.
The person who broke in stole an Xbox, and there was jewelry taken.
She's like, that's all I some teenagers.
Sometimes when robbers break in and steal things, they return a few weeks later to see if the items have been replaced.
She's like, I'm a little nervous to leave the house now, but she's like, this is crazy. But she really wasn't sleeping because she was worried that they might come back.
Maybe she was home, maybe the robbers returned, and this could have caused her death.
We all assumed that whoever was responsible for the break-in would possibly have been the person who murdered Crystal.
There's just one problem with that theory.
Usually with a burglary, you're going to find the house in disarray. But there wasn't any of that here. There didn't appear to be anything missing except Crystal's cell phone.
Do you know if she had any enemies? I know she's an officer, but anybody that she mentioned specifically that would want to hurt her? There's not no one that I can think of, she's a sweet person.
Danielle can't think of anyone who would want to hurt Crystal. She's been very forthcoming with detectives and really has given them all the information she has.
After speaking with Danielle, detectives turn to Crystal's arrest reports to see if anyone from that list sticks out as a possible suspect.
Here you go. Whoa, all this in the last 6 months? She was officer of the year. I see why.
We checked her recent arrest records to see if anybody felt like they were unjustly arrested by her, if there was any motivation for them to come back and do harm to her.
Detectives also follow up with Crystal's superiors at the East Point Police Department, hoping to learn more about Crystal's movements in the hours prior to her death.
Hey, Detective. Hey. Just wanted to ask you a couple questions. When was the last time you spoke with Crystal?
Well, she didn't show up for work, which was very strange for her.
Crystal, who's always punctual, all of a sudden she doesn't show up to work. Her supervisor calls her and gets no answer, and then he gets a text from Crystal saying that her father was in the hospital, out of town, and she was there with him.
Which I thought was strange, because something like that, Crystal normally would have called me. She wouldn't be texting me.
Crystal's commanding officer says on the following afternoon, July 4th, Crystal was again absent from work.
Next day, she was a no-show again. So I sent her a text asking her how she's doing.
Crystal's supervisor, he sent Crystal a text saying, how are things? And he gets a text back saying, oh, I'm fine, how are you?
Which is a very strange response, considering the conversation we had the day before.
This was weird, coming from somebody who was supposedly visiting their sick dad in the hospital. No update on his status, no when am I going to be back.
An even bigger red flag appears when detectives question Crystal's father on July 8th.
Sir, we're very sorry for your loss. We spoke with Crystal's boss. They were texting back and forth and said that you were possibly sick and in the hospital. I was never in the hospital.
They talked to him. He says, no, I haven't been in the hospital and I haven't talked to my daughter.
He said he was never sick and Crystal would never just send a text to her job.
The officers realized that Crystal wasn't sending those messages, but that someone else had Crystal's phone.
We suspected Crystal was already dead at this time.
But who was using Crystal's phone? In the hours to follow, that mystery only deepens.
Crystal and Danielle's love life was so complicated that there was more than one person on each side that was waiting in the wings.
She was blowing my stuff. This is what I'm telling you. Pick up the phone. Where are you? I need you. Pick up, pick up, pick up.
It's been 24 hours since police officer Crystal Parker was found shot to death inside her College Park, Georgia home.
Officers realized that someone took Crystal's phone immediately after killing her and began to communicate after that.
Her direct supervisor received a text from Crystal's phone after she failed to show up to work. And the text was something to the effect that her father was sick, that's why she's out of work.
Our dad was like, I wasn't in no hospital. Where y'all getting that from?
With the whereabouts of the cell phone unknown, detectives are faced with another daunting challenge.
The only lead they have really that's concrete at this point is Crystal's mountain of arrest reports. So they're looking for a potential suspect who might have attacked Crystal as payback for arresting them.
The detectives don't find anything that is truly compelling. They find people that are still in jail, or they've committed minor infractions that wouldn't amount to someone really wanting to commit this crime.
As for the break-in at Crystal's house 2 weeks before the murder, that also looks like a dead end.
In regards to the burglary and to the homicide, we looked at everything. But at that initial point in time, we cannot tie in the burglary to the homicide.
The next day, the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office reports that Crystal's autopsy has been completed.
Ringing. Hello? Hey, what you got? Really? All right, we're on our way to come check it out.
The autopsy revealed it was a smaller caliber weapon that she was killed with. It was a .38 caliber.
Crystal's service weapon was a .40 caliber handgun. So the gun recovered in the bedroom was not the murder weapon.
Back at square one, investigators decide to look deeper into Crystal's private life.
I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us today.
Detectives turn to Crystal's friends and family for more information, and what they're about to learn spins the case in an entirely different direction.
There started to be some issues with Danielle closer to the murder time period. The relationship had started getting on a little bit of a rocky situation.
It was a good relationship in the beginning, but things just kind of went south.
Went south in what way?
Danielle was taking advantage of Crystal, and she had been doing it for years.
Danielle would spend a lot of money, and Crystal would have to work extra hard to make that up, you know, because Danielle was not working.
It seems Danielle's dream of becoming a nurse is more of an excuse to remain a perpetual student and not have to venture out into the working world.
She was really just using school to have some fun and goof off. Crystal, though, was paying for that education, so she wanted results. It had really become a sticking point between the two.
Was there anything else?
Crystal was pretty sure that Danielle was cheating on her.
Really?
One time she caught her cheating and, with a mutual friend.
Crystal came home one night from a long shift at work and saw Danielle at home, cuddled up on the couch, watching a movie with another woman.
What the hell is this?
We're watching a movie.
Danielle brushed it off and said they were only friends, but Crystal wasn't buying it.
But really? Well, the movie's over. It's time for you to leave.
Crystal would call me, confide in me. She was heartbroken by the cheating.
The fact that Danielle was straying, seeing other people, especially when she's providing her with a roof over her head, that was too much to handle.
She was fed up, and she just told Danielle that she had to get out.
Okay, when was this?
It was a couple of months ago, and Danielle was trying to win her back ever since.
But friends say that even after Crystal kicked Danielle out of their home, the two still stayed in touch.
Danielle always tried to win Crystal's affection.
Crystal gave her the ultimatum, and then they would, like I said, kiss and make up again.
Friends state that just when it seemed Crystal and Danielle were about to reconcile, Crystal reconnected with an old high school friend named Ellen Michaels.
Crystal and Ellen had only been friends in high school, but as they communicated on Facebook, their messages and relationship began to develop and actually became rather flirtatious.
If you guys come across any more information, please give us a call. Don't hesitate to contact us, all right?
Sure.
Following their new lead, detectives reach out to Crystal's high school pal turned potential lover, Ellen Michaels.
Thank you so much for driving up to speak with us today. We're very sorry for your loss.
Ellen still lived in Florida.
I spoke with her on the phone. She came up to Atlanta immediately. She wanted to help us out any way she could.
When did you guys first meet?
In high school.
Okay. Did you stay in touch after that?
No, not really. I reached out to her on Facebook, and we found out we had a lot in common.
Crystal and Ellen's relationship developed to the point where Crystal arranged for a visit to see Ellen in person in Florida.
When was the last time you saw her?
Just last week. She drove down from Atlanta.
Was everything okay after she left?
Well, not exactly.
Ellen tells detectives about an unusual incident that took place their last night together in Florida.
Her ex just kept texting her over and over.
Crystal began receiving calls from Danielle, asking her to call her, texting her over and over, and making a very uncomfortable situation.
So how have you been?
I've been good.
Oh.
Who is it?
It's my ex.
Told her just turn her phone off because it was annoying, but she said it might be something important.
Did you think they were still together at that time?
She said they weren't, but it seemed like they were.
Detectives are now starting to look at Ellen to see if maybe Ellen could have been angered by the fact that Crystal was still in contact with Danielle.
They asked her where she was on July 3rd and 4th, and she says she's at home in Florida.
Detectives are able to confirm Ellen's alibi.
If you come across any more information, please don't hesitate to contact us. All right?
I'll walk you out.
But when police get their hands on Crystal and Danielle's cell records, another suspect enters the equation and throws a wrench into this puzzling investigation.
He laid everything on the table. He said that he was her on-again, off-again new boyfriend.
Man, to be honest, I never knew she was married to no female.
During their investigation into the murder of police officer Crystal Parker, detectives in Atlanta have learned that Crystal's relationship with her wife, Danielle, was teeming with problems.
Danielle had been cheating on Crystal, and Crystal eventually put Danielle out of their home.
Crystal did meet someone else and had started a new relationship.
Hey, man, I got Danielle's phone records.
When detectives finally get their hands on Crystal and Danielle's cell phone records, one number in Danielle's records stands out.
You keep seeing the same number popping up?
They discovered that she had been speaking to a person named Craig Hudson around the time of Crystal's murder.
I knew the number was a significant point of interest.
Investigators immediately contact Craig Hudson, and he agrees to come down to the station for questioning.
Let's get right into it. You know Danielle Parker?
Yes, I know Danielle Parker.
But no one is prepared for what Craig says next.
He said that he was on-again, off-again boyfriend of Danielle.
They had known each other for a few weeks, and they had met through mutual friends.
Detectives are immediately shocked by what they're hearing. From what they have gathered, Danielle is clearly a lesbian.
According to Craig, when he first met Danielle, she was upfront about the fact she was coming out of a long-term relationship.
What did she tell you?
She had just broke up with her ex-husband a couple months ago.
Danielle told Craig that she was married to a man, and this man was abusive to her.
Danielle told him she was doing everything she could to get out of the relationship and completely separate.
Craig says that on July 4th, Danielle told him she was going over to her ex-husband's house to collect a few belongings, and she was worried about a confrontation.
Craig was kind of concerned for Danielle. Danielle had painted this picture of how she was being abused.
Despite his concerns, Craig says he decided not to get involved and didn't join Danielle that day. But a few hours later, his cell phone started blowing up.
He received a barrage of texts from Danielle.
What did they say?
Pick up the phone. Where are you? I need you. Pick up, pick up, pick up. This motherfucker woke up.
I have the gun. Oh my gosh, he's at home. I'm scared. Babe, tell me what to do.
Then Craig tells detectives she texts something really ominous. I did it.
The hell is she talking about? He says, you did what? She says, I did it.
And what Craig's mind was, Danielle had killed her husband in self-defense.
Although Danielle's text message insinuates she shot someone, detectives are certain it couldn't have been an ex-husband.
There was never a husband, and he couldn't believe it, but he had no idea that she was involved with a female, with Crystal.
Man, this girl say she was married to a dude. Man, be honest, I never knew she was married to no female.
To detectives, it's becoming clear that Danielle was likely involved in Crystal's shooting.
The text messages played out like a book.
It's hard to tell if it's premeditated or self-defense, if the claims of abuse are to be believed. They also wonder if Craig could still somehow be involved in Crystal's death.
Detectives had to look at him and wonder what was his role. Did he participate in the murder? Before the fact or after the fact or during the fact?
All thing I need to say is, I ain't got nothing to do with this shit. I ain't know this bitch crazy.
Police check his phone records and they don't see any indication that he had been anywhere near Crystal's house that day.
But the same can't be said for Danielle's phone.
Danielle told detectives she hadn't seen Crystal since June 27th. However, when they investigated and they looked through the call logs, it was evident she was at Crystal's home on July 3rd, one day before she did not report to work.
Those same records also showed that after July 4th, the day Crystal failed to report to work, her phone and Danielle's phone continually pinged off the same towers.
I think we just found enough for a warrant. Let's go. Let's go.
We were able to track both phones together, going on a major interstate in Atlanta. Crystal was already dead at this time.
Detectives believed that Danielle had been using Crystal's phone.
The cell phone records showed the texts to the supervisor originated from Danielle's mother's home.
On July 9th, detectives obtain a warrant to search the home where Danielle is living. What secrets would they find inside? And would it be enough to put Danielle behind bars for the murder of her wife?
This is the one that used to call you wifey. This is how she was found.
After analyzing Crystal and Danielle Parker's cell phone records, police in Georgia believe Danielle killed her estranged wife. And on July 9th, 2013, 5 days since the murder, Fulton County Police descend on Danielle's place of residence.
We secured a warrant for Danielle Parker's mother's house because Danielle was living with the mother at that time.
Danielle wasn't at the residence, but detectives went ahead with the search of the property.
When police search the home, they find Crystal's wallet and her credit cards.
But that's not the only incriminating evidence detectives find in Danielle's room.
Yeah, I think we got something here. What you got?
Yeah, looks like the same gaming system that was stolen.
The serial numbers matched the same game console taken in a burglary weeks earlier in Crystal Parker's house.
Police realized it wasn't teenagers who robbed Crystal a few weeks before her murder. It was Danielle.
One item investigators don't find is a gun.
We had information through family and friends that Danielle did own a purple gun. We can never find that gun, and nobody ever knew the caliber of that gun. So, could have been the murder weapon? Possibly, but without knowing the caliber of that gun, we don't know. We had no paperwork on the gun, no documentation.
Although they don't find the murder weapon, officers find something nearly as damning.
Look what we got here. What caliber?
38.
The autopsy report revealed that Crystal Parker had been shot once in the head with a .38 caliber bullet.
Within the hour, detectives track Danielle down and bring her in for a second interview. This time, when confronted with the new mountain of evidence against her, Danielle is not interested in cooperating.
Thank you. Continue to drink your water, right?
She said she didn't want to talk. Can't make anybody talk when she asks for a lawyer.
That evening, police charged Danielle with the murder of Crystal Parker.
As soon as I got the news that she was arrested, I was very happy and pleased.
I was more hurt than anything. I was angry, but we kind of knew that she possibly had something to do with it.
But as the case proceeds down the path towards a trial, Danielle maintains her innocence.
She was pleading not guilty, which uproared everybody. It just was like, are you serious?
In pretrial filings, prosecutors lay out the events they believe led to Crystal's death.
They believe that in the early morning hours of July 4th, Danielle arrived at the residence they once shared together, begging for Crystal to take her back.
What are you doing here?
I want to talk to you about our relationship. You know how I feel about the situation.
Oh, listen, Danielle, I'm seeing somebody else.
I know, that's why I want to talk to you. I want us to get back together.
I'm too tired to talk to you. I'm going to bed. You need to leave.
So now you don't have time for me?
Danielle really wanted to be with Crystal. She was not happy with the new relationship with the new girl in Florida.
Not letting up, Danielle walks upstairs to ask Crystal for another chance. But once upstairs, prosecutors allege she overhears a phone call between Crystal and her new girlfriend, Ellen Michaels, that dashes her hopes for reconciliation.
Did you get those flowers I sent you? Good. No, I was thinking about coming down there in about a week or two. Yeah, sounds perfect. All right, good night. Sweet dreams.
I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Danielle.
Prosecutors believe after the murder that Danielle was texting Craig, trying to cover her tracks and get his sympathy. She then took Crystal's cell phone and left.
She uses the phone later that day to text Crystal's supervisor, trying to give the illusion that Crystal's still alive.
Despite the state's assertions, Danielle remains steadfast in her innocence up until the moment her trial begins.
They had just called the jury. Courtroom was packed. I was there ready to go. And the 11th hour, she took a plea.
Danielle pleaded guilty to murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and felony possession of a weapon. She got life in prison, plus 5 years.
She never apologized. She never fully admitted that she killed Crystal.
To me, she never showed any remorse. She never once turned around to address us as family and say, I'm sorry.